Good evening, everybody. We're going to call this meeting to order at 6:31. My name is Carrie Bristow. I'm the chair. John Williams is the vice chair over here, and we have a lot of people on Zoom as well as in the audience. Thank you all for coming. And we're going to get the meeting started, and I'm going to have some changes to the agenda, so just bear with me when I talk about that. Thank you. All right, are there any amendments to the agenda? I have two amendments. The first one is that I'm going to move the public comment, which would normally be next, to after the legislative report. And at that time, I will invite all of you who are here or on Zoom, and after the board has asked their questions, I'll open public comment for you all to ask your questions, make comments. And then if you have other public comments that do not regard the legislative report, I'll ask you to hold that until everyone else has gone first, so that we keep things together and grouped. So thank you for that. Is there a motion to accept that amendment?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Seth, Corinne. Thank you. The second amendment is that I'm going to move the second public comment. Oh, no, she's already moved it in here. We're good. All right, it's all set. So we don't need a second one. Thank you. All right, we're going to start with our reports, starting with the superintendent.
Thank you, Carrie. Just a few updates I want to speak to first. We began the MDSU Life Learning Series. We had one on estate planning that was in October. We had 30 faculty, staff, and community members participating. We have our second MDSU Life Learning Series workshop this Wednesday night, and the topic is around understanding Alzheimer's and dementia. It will be here in the library and on Zoom. I was approached by the Center on Reinventing Public Education, which is part of Arizona State University. They are looking at the 6 New England states and interviewing superintendents for districts that are working on ambitious transformation efforts. They were really impressed by the work that the district has done in terms of our strategic planning, and interviewing me for now around the work we've done, which is pretty exciting. We have 2 events coming up in November. The first is our 5th annual Student Leadership Summit on Social Justice, where we'll have over 100 students participating from Woodstock Union High School, Hartford High School, Thetford Academy, and from Windsor High School. So we're excited about that. Students plan, fundraise, and organize the entire event. We'll be at the Killington Grand Hotel on November 14th. Looking at topics and trends, and Lyle will speak to. The QSA group will be speaking. Kat Robbins will be speaking towards the impact of current administration on environmental studies. And then the third, Senator Joe Major will be speaking in terms of the impact on democracy in the current administration. So that will be on November 14th. And then on the 18th, we have a visit from the Senate Education Committee, and I'll speak to more of that.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions for Sherry? All right, thank you. Are there any directors here tonight or on Zoom who would like to make a report? Saying no. All right, at this time then I'm going to turn it over to our student board members.
All right. So the QSA is preparing for a presentation at the upcoming Leadership Summit. On Friday, November 14th, we'll head to the Killington Grand Hotel to stand in front of peers from across the state, as well as members of the high school. The summit is a really fantastic networking opportunity, focusing on constitutional values, personal testimony, and an overview of executive orders. The group will lead one of 3 breakout strands in research. Members will share their own thoughts and emotions and encourage research into historical and current activism. The intention is, as always, to foster hope and encourage involvement in the things that matter.
Well, October at Woodstock been very busy. The big thing is most of the fall sports are ended or are ending soon. I've been part of cross country. We ran states at Thetford, where the boys placed 8th, unfortunately, and the girls luckily were able to place 5th, which is amazing for them. And then with an excellent runner, Cautious Luca, qualifying for New England, which is a big regional competition. And we had other events such as homecoming, which was a great night for student council. They were able to generate a lot of revenue and plan more events for our school. And a concern that has been seen from a lot of seniors with the decision deadlines closing was grading policies and how as senior grades are finalized, some students with concerns that if large portions of the class struggled, teachers should offer leniency. In response, several staff members emphasize maintaining academic integrity and student accountability. Just an overall concern of not having a uniform grading policy to protect both students and teachers. And then looking ahead, AP test registration closes November 14th. And some students have expressed frustration with the new process as an extra obstacle because you're no longer paid for one AP test, which may not seem like a lot, but for some students that are only taking one AP class, it's an extra obstacle for them. All I got.
Thank you, Lyle and Logan. We'll be introducing you a little bit later. This is his first board meeting with us as a representative. All right, at this time then, I'm going to turn the floor over to our three legislators. I thank Allison Clarkson very much for inviting Rebecca Holcomb to come. And you three can decide who wants to go first, or if you're only having one speaker tonight, that's fine.
Well, with the audience and board members' indulgence, I think we have such a fabulous expert in the room who's a member of the redistricting task force that Charlie and I know some about it and are happy to chat about a lot of other things that we've been working on. But I think the interest is keenly focused, sort of laser focused at the moment on Act 73's work in the redistricting task force. And we have an extraordinary member who is relatively local, our former Secretary of Education, Rebecca Holcomb, who's a state representative from representing Norwich, Sharon, Stratford, and Thetford, who serves on the redistricting committee, and she's sort of our secret weapon. So it just made a lot of sense to invite her because she knows the most at the moment of any of us, and is keenly, she knows the timetable, she knows she can help us reset our expectations and give us a notion of what's happening. Because you are in the trenches.
That was definitely done.
Oh, thank you.
Just one thing before Rebecca starts, remember that the legislature is not in session right now.
Right.
So we start in session in January, so this is a time where study and committees and task forces meet and deliberate. And the one that has the most attention and the most work to do is the redistricting task force school.
Yeah.
So.
And on that, before Rebecca starts, are you serving on a task force this fall?
I am not.
Oh, how liberating. I'm serving on one that interests a number of families in this neck of the woods. I'm serving on a task force from Act 69, which is addressing how we can develop more service-supported housing for our intellectually developmentally disabled people, not just kids. But we have a lot of parents aging out of being able to take care of intellectually, developmentally disabled children and adults. And it's estimated we need about 600 more supported housing units for these people. And it's sort of slowly building into its own kind of crisis because of the aging out of so many parents. So I'm enjoying that. It's a very different world for me. And but that's the task force I'm on. And at some point, Charlie and I can talk about our priorities for the next session, which will involve some pieces of education, obviously. But I think for tonight, for your interest now, I think maybe Rebecca is. All
right, thank you. I don't know if it's best for you to sit here or come to the side, I'm not sure.
Whatever works for you.
Or if you want to come up here.
Whatever.
Why don't you do that?
That's true.
No, that's not true.
Well, thank you very much.
Do I select a speaker or do I select, Microphone.
As Allison said, I represent
Ah,
the towns east of us, but I am incredibly privileged to call this place a place I used to live and feel deep affection for Woodstock. Thank you for having me here tonight. I want to start by saying first and foremost that I voted against this bill. And I decided to continue to work on the task force because the bill was moving forward. And it was important to me that we do the best job we could in trying to deal with the implementation of the bill, even though I had serious concerns about it. And actually, those have only grown deeper through this process. I also think it's important to say that I'm here tonight not to speak for the task force. I can only speak for myself, and I do not represent the task force in any way. And I also want to be very clear that there is no plan that has yet received the approval of the task force. So there is no plan that is definitely moving forward at this point. And I think the task force felt it was important to take all ideas that were brought to the table and play them out. And I think that process is helpful because it helps us understand the issues at stake, but it also unfortunately helps other people understand what the bill is asking. And so the things that are raising concern, those are the things that are required by this bill. And we could not do this work without touching on those concerns. But at this point, there is no plan and no map that has been agreed to by the task force that we can tell you for sure is moving forward to the body. And I think it's also important to understand that the task force itself is not a decision-making body. It is an advisory group. It is a group that is going to pull together some ideas and hand them off to the legislature. We don't make those decisions. At the end of the day, it is the General Assembly when it comes back in January, which says, thank you very much, blah, 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 whatever they're going to decide to do. So that is not what comes out of our body is not actually necessarily what's going to happen. That said, we have taken the job very seriously, and I think people felt that was something with this degree of complexity and importance, and there is nothing more important than the impact that our decisions have on the next generation. You are the future of Vermont, and we feel that we have the utmost public trust to try to do our best job, to do our due diligence, to make sure we're testing the issues, we're understanding the issues, how they're going to affect our communities, so that we don't carelessly make decisions that might have adverse impact on the young Vermonters who are our future. So that hopefully explains some of the work that's been done. And I think we have been very successful. It's been very, very difficult to get data out of the Agency of Education. We've had to push very hard to get some of it. We've been told repeatedly to just draw the lines. Don't worry about the details. We'll figure them out later. You all know where else we've heard that. And what we keep saying is, I'm so sorry, those details are children. And so until we can understand the impact on our children, and all of Vermont's children are our children, we're going to need the information. And there's still some information we haven't gotten. We will be noting that in the task force report, but it has been helpful. The first thing we did was try to understand, because the bill itself doesn't really specify the goals. It really just requires us to draw district maps that could be used to implement a funding formula. As a group, we decided we need to start by defining the problems. What is it we're trying to solve? So we spent the first meetings and the second meeting trying to clarify what are the challenges that face Vermonters right now. And I don't think I'm surprising anyone when I say it's been challenges around affordability. Property costs are extraordinarily burdensome to people. And I think there's a very strong commitment on the task force to make sure that what we're doing is really consistent with the idea of trying to constrain spending where it's not needed, or trying to do things more efficiently so that we can take care of Vermonters. When we're asking people to work a second job so they can pay the property tax, that's a challenge. That's just not right either. Another one is flagging quality, and what we are seeing statewide, particularly post-pandemic, is that student performance has not yet fully rebounded. And I would pair with that we have a number of ambitious initiatives to improve student outcomes, which were never fully implemented. Act 173 should never have moved forward without the intensive professional development that was initially contemplated. And we're already having not implemented fully 173, which is the special education bill, or the previous funding formula. We're now trying to replace them with 2 new funding formulas that replace that work. And so we've heard a lot from districts about policy churn and how when the state keeps moving the goalposts, it's difficult for districts to do well because they're constantly trying to readjust to new initiatives. Another big driver is a thing that came up repeatedly was just cost of healthcare. You know, that so many of the cost drivers within school boards purview aren't controllable really anymore. You know, we've been going up, you know, by double digits every year. In the last 4 to 5 years, healthcare insurance premiums, just the premiums for teachers, not the health related services in the ed fund, now account for, they've gone from about 14% to about 16% of total education spending. That is an unsustainable trajectory. There is no way to contain those costs right now. As a school district, you don't need to negotiate them because those negotiations are moved to the state level. Something that is going to be painful to this district, and I want to honor how painful it's got to be, the construction and maintenance of facilities. Line item has been increasing. I think it's the second fastest growing line item in the ed fund. This is partly a reflection of the severely deteriorated capacity or state of our buildings statewide, but it's also because bigger districts are floating bonds and you're paying for them because those costs are shared across the ed fund. And we are seeing that a number of districts have come to the point where they've said, we can't wait for the state to provide construction aid anymore. So we are going to take out a bond to fill their capital needs. But some districts are having an easier time than others. And I think obviously for a smaller district, that's a real challenge. One of the surprise findings for us was there's been a lot of talk, and Act 73 talks a lot about savings from dealing with reducing teacher numbers. And we were interested to note that between fiscal year 2000 and 2025, student numbers did drop by about 7%. So you would expect a drop in student teachers. And we did actually see that. Our total teacher count dropped by about 8% in that same time window. Even though we grew the number of pre-K teachers. So schools are providing more school-based pre-K. And that is increasing, but overall our K-12 teacher numbers have been dropping. So what is the big increase? The big increase is in support staffing, and support staffing has to do with social services provided through schools. And it also probably has to do with the incomplete implementation of Act 173. And Sherry, you're nodding your head because you know this inside out and better than most people in the state. But what we saw was an increase in support staff in that same window of 22%. Something's wrong. That's a leadership gap. And we cannot fix that with merging. We're going to have to figure out how to have that conversation. Your superintendent knows better than I do some of the reasons we're seeing those increases, and we are going to be trying to talk about that a bit in our report, but those are things that we're going to have to address. And then the last is just that the agency has severely, it's diminished. I don't know how else to say it. It has about 30% fewer staff than it did 20 years ago, and the staff that were cut had to do with a lot of the state initiatives, which is why we can pass all the laws we want, we can make all the rules we want, state board can put in new EQS, we can have a new literacy requirement, but if there's no capacity to implement it, it really doesn't matter. So I think the takeaway from us hearing from people and stakeholders across the state is we need to be a little strategic about what it is we actually can do, and we certainly can't take on a very large bill that we have no capacity as a state to implement. So I'm just setting the table with this conversation to help you understand. I hear the fear, I really do. I hear the concern, I hear the incredible value Vermonters place across the state on their kids and on their schools and making sure they have the best chance. And we are trying to take that very, very seriously in the task force. So let me turn to what we are doing. There are 4 types of conversations taking place at the task force. All 4 will be discussed at the next task force meeting. I can send to your superintendent and she can forward to anyone who wants it. The bills, in fact, I think you already know where they are. The draft language, they are all incomplete, as many people and everybody who's presented has said, this is not ready for game time yet. And in fact, some people were reluctant to even present because they said they're not even sure they can get it ready for game time in time. And not all of these will make it into the final task force report. I can't speak to which ones will or won't, but I think it's helpful to hear, both because it will help you understand what this law is asking for, but it will also help you understand some of the challenges the task force has had around trying to find things that aren't just moving the furniture for the sake of moving the furniture, but are actually trying to target cost, quality and making sure everybody has fair access. And frankly, making sure it's feasible, making sure we're not taking on anything that we have no capacity to implement. This is a region that went through a merger. You know how much work it was, you know how long it took, and you know that the expected benefits took years to realize. The first thing that will happen if we've gone with the governor's initial plan of 5 statewide, 5 school choice districts, first thing that would have happened is we would have leveled up contracts. By some people's estimates, we would have spent, 300 million right out of the gate, just leveling up contracts. That's even before you start getting to implementation of efficiency. So this is serious business, and making a mistake or doing the wrong thing for kids, it could hurt your budget. It could create a lot of chaos. So we're really trying to make sure we do our due diligence. Here are the plans that are on the table. Again, think of these as thought exercises. None of these has been committed to. Some of these are not going to move forward. The first one is a plan that organizes around CTE districts. I think this is the one that has been most upsetting to this region based on the texts and the emails I've been getting today. This is a plan that was put in by Scott Beck and Dave Wolf. And what it does is it takes the existing CTE regions, moves a couple other districts around them, and makes those 13 districts statewide. Right now, it's calling them districts on the template. As Scott Beck said, the purpose of doing this is to have districts that are big enough to implement a new funding formula. So that's his rationale for this. It very clearly says in the plan district, but when we talk to him, he says they might also be supervisory unions. If they're supervisory unions, then they don't meet the requirements of Act 73. Raises interesting questions about why you would make bigger supervisory unions as a district that has moved to a supervisory district from an SU. You know the advantages of that. And it raises questions, if we're not really changing anything, why would we do anything at all? Just why would you move the furniture if there's no sensible purpose? I don't know. They're going to go back and they're going to work on it again. I know that when that plan was put on the table, one of the first things I noticed is that you had submitted a memo to the task force talking about some potential partnerships and work with neighboring districts around the regional high school. And I did ask Scott Beck and Dave Wolf, have you considered the request from that region? And he said, no, we did not. And he is ostensibly going to look at that before he comes back at the next meeting. But I think the primary concern was that that district really cut you off from people that you have deep and meaningful partnerships with and you're looking for opportunities with. That particular plan has gotten questions from, I would say, other parts of the state. You're not the only part of the state. It feels like your existing district has been cut. And so I think you're going to see some more questions about that. The task force perception was that that plan wasn't even robustly enough developed to be even discussed. We don't know if it's a district or an SU. I don't even know what we're talking about. So until that's clear, I think we're gonna just see what they bring back. The next plan, and I'm not allowed to make recommendations, but somebody in the room is very instrumental in this, is a regional shared education services plan. And this is a plan that says, hey, we got cost problems, we've got quality problems, we've got some serious issues around equitable access to critical services. Why don't we do what 38 other states do, and especially states that are rural states that have smaller schools, and put together the equivalent of BOCES, or Regional Cooperative Education Services. And it seems to me that someone in this room was pretty instrumental in piloting this in the context of Vermont. It's only been the proof case. And so I'm very grateful to you, this board, for allowing your superintendent to come and present at the task force, because that presentation was pivotal in helping other task force members see that BOCES are a way to quickly get to scale without the burden of governance change, but to quickly bear down on some of those challenges around cost and quality that you're all very well aware of because you live them every time you come to a board meeting. And so the power of that is that could go with our current situation. You could pair it with another map, but what it does do, unlike the merger proposals, is let you quickly and immediately get to work on addressing the problems that we're hearing from boards and districts are the problems that are plaguing Vermont. So stay tuned, that one will be coming back. And we were grateful for the feedback we got, which is making it better as we speak. And again, we are, per the 2020 census, we are the most rural state. We have, because our population is so spread out, and it's very dispersed compared to other areas. And we are the only very rural state that does not use this kind of shared services model. And there's a reason the other states do it, so let's do it. It works, it's proven, it's not a risk, it's something we know actually works. The next was a proposal for strategic mergers, and this was an effort to try to understand what the research actually does and does not say about mergers, and try to figure out if there are places where mergers make sense and what that would look like. And part of the problem here is we turned over every tree, we shook every tree. We can find no evidence, no research, nothing that's quality, peer review grade that supports what Act 73 is asking us to do. It just doesn't, it's not there, it doesn't exist. So we said, okay, what does the research say, and can we use that to come up with some strategic guidelines for where it makes sense to have some progress in this area? And so that strategic merger plan came up with a set of evidence-based guidelines for where mergers might yield benefits, and it's in very, very small districts. And so we sorted all the districts by their current size. There's, I think, I've put the number up right now, but there's, we basically looked at every district under 500 and then evaluated in terms of where they were in the state, what their demographics were, who their neighbors were, whether they did work under Act 46 or not, and tried to get a better handle on who was there and why. Because actually we have had a lot of mergers over the last 20 years, and we've had a lot of people shifting from supervisory and SDs. So the question is, where isn't that happening? And we did, it's a geographically driven thing, but we were able to figure out where they were. And then we said, well, before we go ahead and mandate these, we need to even just talk about, people need to understand what we're asking and what the implications are. So we played out 3 different scenarios. If you apply these guidelines, where are places that these mergers might yield benefits or results for people in those regions? So for example, in the capital region, which is the Barre, Montpelier, Twin Valley, Twinfield region, U32, they've had something like 40% population loss over the last 25 years. They actually have more high schools than they did back then. They've got underutilized buildings. They're also talking about building a brand new regional CTE center. And one of their buildings is in a flood zone, and some of the others, like your facility, are very depreciated. They're in very, very bad condition. That's an opportunity, a region where a little bit of strategic support, just like you need some strategic support to move across the line in a high school building, might help them do better. Put more kids under fewer roofs, bring down their overall cost structure. We mapped the 30-minute drive time. They're all sitting in the middle of it. They're very close to each other. It's a place where they ought to have a conversation. Similarly, we looked at, we tried to pick prototypes that were very different, so that by picking 3 very different regions, we're just digging that shovel in deep and flipping the dirt up so we can turn up what's there, so people can see what this will happen. Another region we looked at was the Leland and Gray region, which is in the middle of southern Vermont. People often think of the Northeast Kingdom when they think about population loss and they think about hardship. The southern tier of the state is really suffering. In fact, it's why our legislative districts all move south. They're losing population faster than the Northeast Kingdom. And we looked at that region, and we looked at, we actually couldn't even use the tools that the governor put out. We had to, and this is part of why it's taking so long. We had to download the data, upload all the addresses in the state of Vermont into ArcGIS, and we were trying to figure out how to map, where people had access and didn't have access to things like CTE and to a regional high school that was able to provide comprehensive programming. And one of the places that just kept coming up was Leland and Gray. It's small, it's isolated, it's really far. If that school closed, like, kids would have really, really long bus rides because there's nothing accessible nearby that's open. And they have no good access to CTE. So what we were able to do is model what's happening in that area and how pairing them with a shared services model might allow them to push in access to some of those programs that they could never afford on their own as a freestanding district, but maybe with the support of one of these larger regions, we could do some work. And then the last region was, and this was partly coming out of the public hearings at Leland and Gray and Rutland, where a very large number of people from the towns of Winhall and Stratton turned out to ask to continue to have access to their school of choice and to stay with the Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union. We said, okay, so 2 of the smallest districts in the state are Winhall and Stratton. They don't operate any schools, so they can't control their costs all by themselves. And meanwhile, Bennington Rutland Supervisory Union has lost a lot of kids. I mean, you know, people say, well, if you have school choice, you keep your population. That's just not what the data is showing. We're all losing population except for about 5 towns. And so, and those tend to be either very wealthy or they tend to be in our economic centers. So this is a shared problem. We have to deal with this declining enrollment. And so we said, okay, well, what if you put Stratton and Winhall with Bennington Rutland? They would go to the elementary schools in Bennington Rutland, and like Bennington Rutland, they would have 9 through 12 choice. Is still, and that was the other model, and we showed that by backfilling those kids into the elementary schools in that district, they would actually save, you know, more money than they're proposing to save by closing their 2 elementary schools. So there's some opportunities, and part of what we're highlighting is the choices we're going to have to make. You know, and the line we were using at the last meeting is you can't have a 28 course buffet and expect to pay $3 and have edible food. It just isn't going to happen. So we're going to have to make some choices about what we really want, and then we're going to have to work really hard to make it happen. So that bill was designed to push it back. The next and the last one I'll discuss, and then I want to just shut up and take questions, is I think this one was hard to understand, but that was the one that took all the existing data and said, okay, let's say we felt very strongly that we needed a regional high school within a half-hour drive time of every high school student that was of sufficient scale to provide robust programming and perhaps a career pathway or 2. And we just used all the data in ArcGIS. We had a task force member has a son who's got that capacity. We're MacGyvering this like crazy. But and what was interesting is that what it pointed out is indeed actually in this region. So there's some opportunity, and what we were trying to do is identify places where putting some construction aid behind districts that wanted to partner to build those better futures, whether we could not immediately, because there is no construction aid, it was taken out of the bill in conference committee. But if we have construction aid and we wanted to make a difference, you're talking a 10-year process minimum, but where could we start targeting and prioritizing the regions that are trying to do the right thing at the high school level? Because that's where the opportunity is right now. And sort of put those criteria on the table and identify those regions where the need's greatest and put them in line first. So that if we're going to try to solve these solutions for kids where the need is greatest, and we're going to put that there. And interestingly, we ran that against the data on building quality and capacity. We sort of jumped right to the top. Sorry about that. But what we found is most of the regions where we're seeing a need are also regions that have buildings like yours that are quite deteriorated. So that was kind of reassuring that we were not recommending something that contradicted what the evidence were suggesting. So that's where we are. I want to say again, it makes me sick to my stomach at the beginning of every meeting, because I know every time we mention a district by name, people are going to get upset. This is scary as heck, right? It's your kids. You would all, I know if you're a parent, I know you would lie in front of a truck for your child. That's great. That's what your kids need you to do. We are feeling that. I hate talking about these districts by names because I hate doing that to anyone and inducing stress where stress maybe isn't even warranted. But I also know we have to be able to talk about this, and even just laying those prototypes on the table. I've been hearing about it all week, but what it did do is help people understand what this bill is doing, what the bill is not doing, and what are the challenges and opportunities we have had. And I have great faith in us. We are good at having hard conversations when we're deciding we want to. And I'm hoping that we can come through this. It may not look exactly like what people thought, but I'm hoping we can come out with something that will help lead all of our communities a little bit better off. So I'm gonna stop talking.
All right, I think I'll just speak to the elephant, which is that when we saw that last map, our district was completely blown up with one of our schools going to Randolph District, two of our schools going to Rutland, and 1 or 2 going to Springfield, and then the two towns going to Hartford. And so I think that was what caused quite the furor for all of us when we saw that
And
map.
that's the regional high school map?
The last
CTE
one.
map.
The CTE map. Yeah, no, that one. No, I think you're talking about the regional high school map.
Yes.
So I think if you listen to Jay Bowden, the first thing he said is this is completely half-baked, and he explained why, you know, and it's because of it's an iterative program, and he said this is not ready for game time, and he is not putting that map forward. That map is not moving forward. I'm going to tell you as is. what he was trying to get at is this question of how, and the one he put in his presentation was different than the one that was in some of the earlier versions. What he was trying to get at is when you take the number of kids we have and you divide them into that minimum size, about how many high schools do you need and where are there currently gaps? That map is not moving forward as is. And I understand why you would be very worried about that, and I apologize. I can tell you that he prefaced it by saying this is half-baked, this is a thought exercise, and this is not a map that's viable yet.
So I'll
Yeah.
just,
Yeah.
I only have one more comment and then I'll open it for the board members and then the public.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that I lived through Act 46 as a teacher and then ultimately when it came on the board, it was just ending. It was one of the most painful experiences for our district to figure out how 8 schools could come to 8 towns could come together, agree on the financing, agree on the terms. Many board members came and went during that time because of their frustration and anger. The small towns felt that the bigger towns would dominate them. The bigger towns, wanted to make peace. And finally, I think it was 7 or 8 years, finally, we became a merged district and we are a shining example of how it can work when people agree to agree. And so we have, the directors that work for the district have the interest of everyone. There's unanimity amongst the curricula that's presented and so many other savings regarding buildings and grounds materials because of the ability to spend for more buildings. And so to think that our district, which has pretty much led the way in many ways on how to make it work despite different opinions. And we all come together as a group to say we're gonna do the best for the best. And to see that map, and CTE one also took out 2 of our towns, who have all affirmed in writing, I believe, with public testimony to the task force to say, we want to stay together. I just want to say that right here, we want to stay together. We're willing to be part of a bigger district. We have identified 2 partners to work with who we're making some progress in conversations around what this could look like. And, we're cooperating with what the task force wants, which is bigger regions, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, a lot of the people here tonight are very concerned about the breakup of the district. So.
Yeah, I think that would be a terrible thing to do. When the CT map was put on the table, one of the first things I said, that's why I said that, is this district has come forward, they're doing exactly what we asked them to do, that needs to be included in that map. I 100% agree with you. I also, one of the things that came out of the research findings is that if a merger is involuntary, it actually very rarely achieves even the expected cost savings because it's, people have to believe in it. I mean, schools are relationship business. It's all about relationships at the end of the day. And we've had people come in and talk to us. In fact, I don't want to name anyone, but somebody who's on the task force said that when their district merged, they merged, but nothing changed. They didn't do what you did. And there were no savings as a result because they just kept doing what they were doing. This is culture change. This is not you can move the furniture and magic happens. And I'm very aware of that. And I feel like one of the most positive things has been some of the superintendents on the committee who've been able to talk about that experience. Both of them have been through mergers. I went through a merger. And I looked at, with respect to the people who voted for the bill, it's ridiculous. The timeline is ridiculous. It is not doable in the timeline in that bill. I know that. I will continue to vote against it because it is just not even possible. And what we're going to try to do is lay out what is possible. It's why I've been excited about supporting some of the work around shared services because I haven't heard a board say, yeah, we don't have a cost problem. So it's not, what the challenges are. We need to be doing things that enable you and make you amplify you and make it possible for you to do good work. There are also some very serious logistical challenges. Just I don't know how say it, but there are some very boring business things that have to happen that you can only do within a limited period of time. I don't even know how you shut down a district and open a new district in less than a year, technically, you know, and forget about all the other complicated stuff that goes with that. And we tried to make that clear by throwing that into the first meeting in one of the first draft templates. I will bring that concern back, and I share that, and I will just tell you again, we felt that we needed to let people try to put things on the table. I can tell you, not everything on the table is going to move forward. I don't, because there's now 4 things that people are talking about. I don't know what will come out, but I understand if they're your concern.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for the board, no, I can't speak for the task force.
All right, so I'm going to open up, if people would raise their hand, Corinne, and then Lara. Break things down.
When you come to your decisions and about which and however many maps you present as options, do you also have the ability as a task force to, you know, include in your report some recommendations for perhaps, you know, modifying timelines or, you know, amendments or changes that you see as, I mean, you guys have done a lot of deep diving, you know, over these few months and have learned a lot more than, let's say, the General Assembly knows about how education works and sort of the nuts and bolts of the process. And I'm just wondering how much latitude you have to make recommendations beyond just, these are, you know, 2 or 3 maps you could choose from for redistricting purposes.
I think the fact that, I mean, at the very first meeting, you know, one of the task force members said, all you need to do is just make maps. That's your job. Don't get into anything else. The governor in his press conference was like, you need to just stop asking for data, stop asking for deals. You just need to write the maps. The fact that we haven't done that, I think tells you that the task force is not interested in just making the maps and running away. And some of what you're seeing with respect to best practices for mergers is kind of saying, hey, if you want mergers, this is what you need to know. This is what the research says about mergers. This is what, you know, what people are telling us about the timeline. I mean, we had people testify who said that it took them 5 years to complete their merger process, and they were excited to finally turn to improving instruction. And now they're contemplating the fact that they can merge again, and that's very disruptive because they're saying, we want to work on these issues, but when you keep doing these things, we never get to work on the issues because we're always doing the governance. We're never doing the teaching or the learning. And there is some concern about that. So I think you will hear concern about timelines, about what the research actually says about, I don't think anyone, and finally, you know, Scott Beck did say on the table that he doesn't think mergers are going to save money. No one thinks mergers are going to save money. There's no evidence that they will. But the savings, I'm just going to say it. I mean, the savings are coming from the new funding formula, which is going to force pretty significant cuts in some regions and ostensibly level up. I still haven't figured out how when Granville High School only charges $12,000 a kid in New York, how we're going to pay them $30,000 if the kids like there's lots of stuff that has to be worked out there too. But the savings came from capping the rate of growth at NEPA, which is a goods, not a labor-based inflation index. So it's an understatement of the likely inflation in the education sector. And the spreadsheet that the governor used to show the quote unquote savings assumed pandemic era inflation for the next 5 years of 6.5%. If we stuck with our existing 127, but only 2% inflation if we shifted to the new funding formula. I'm sorry, that's spreadsheet math. That's not real savings, because I can do a spreadsheet too, right? And so I think what we're trying to say is this is serious stuff, but this is real. Like people are living in this, and we are not going to buy the spreadsheet math. We're going to be trying to make recommendations that are in line with evidence and what districts are telling us. So I'm hoping we do that. That said, please understand that we are being asked to redesign the state in 8 meetings, and we have no staff. So we're doing the best we can, and we will do the best we can. And I really appreciate the people who've taken the time to write us very detailed, thoughtful letters about opportunities. And we're going to try to treat those as the gifts they are, because it's helped us, and it's helped us develop an appropriate sense of restraint and caution. and also hope and opportunity. And hopefully we can help direct people to things that will be better. This won't work if it doesn't work in the end for our communities as well. And interestingly, we've asked in all of our public forums, which have had pretty high attendance, we've asked people to give feedback on which of the stated goals they think mergers will help address. And I have to say, people are not big on this bill. I'll just leave it at that.
Lara was next.
Yeah, I have a question about the 30-minute drive time. So it seems to me that, based on the maps I've seen, that was calculated based on the idea of like a person driving their car from point A to point B under optimal weather conditions. And I was just wondering if there were, like, what your allowances were for that drive being done by a bus that's gonna be making multiple stops and poor weather conditions. And like, do you have a maximum of how long you expect a child to be on a bus?
There are evidence-based recommendations. And it's very clear that some of what's, I mean, if you were gonna make a district of 4,000 kids in winter, I think it would be bigger than your legislative district. I mean, we're talking big differences. So districts are not the same as schools. You'd still need to have multiple schools in there. I think it is very clear. And so this is district maps. This is not schools, so just to be really clear. The thought exercise, and it's very clear the thought exercise about regional high schools is to address the fact there are places where we have high schools with under 50 kids. Like, let's just be on the table about that. There are things they can't do that you can do. And so the question is, in a place like that where you've got a school of 50 kids, is there another school of 50 kids that's very close by and they could, maybe think about some kind of partnership? Could we put some muscle behind that to help them get to someplace better? The problem is that what you're dealing with is different than what Cabot is dealing with, is different than Leland and McRae, it's different than what we're dealing with in the capital region. So part of it is taking the time to understand basic patterns. And what we're seeing is there's some places that have too much school for the kids they have. I gave you the example of the capital region, because people think all the mergers are rural. They're not all rural. Some capital is a lot of school for a smaller number of kids. And then it's places that have lost huge amounts of population. And, they're losing their schools already. I mean, I think we lost 5 public schools last year. So to think that this is going to close schools, you need to know those schools are closing already. What we're hoping for is more intentional management of our system, so kids aren't hurt because it's survival of the fittest and the weakest schools go down because no one's paying attention. Those are our kids too. And so part of that visioning exercise is to say, hey, this can't just be about the only schools that get to stand are the ones in wealthy communities or in well-populated communities. If we need to make sure that there's opportunity for kids in rural areas, then what does that look like? So that's what that thought exercise was. That was never an intention to cut districts apart. What it was trying to identify is places where you might need to do some targeted support, like additional support to keep opportunities open for kids. And I think even Jay was very clear. But, in terms of drive times, I mean, there is research on that. I used to be a building principal. I wrote every bus route, and we just, I'm sure you bring them too, and we chose how many buses to try to run based on, how long the drive times were. That said, there are parts of the state where they're having trouble running the routes because they can't get any drivers right now. And, there's only one bus.
Yeah, that's our.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, so we can, and if you're, so there's some knockoff possible unintended consequences there. If all of a sudden those bus routes are no longer, and, we were talking about CT access the last meeting, because CT access, they have to get to school and then they still have to get on the bus. So their drive is even longer. So, the more people have to move, just the more time our kids are sitting on buses, and the more time they're on buses, the more time they're not learning during the 8 to 3 day. So we're having those conversations. It's a priority. We were sensitivity testing it. We looked at shorter rides, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and 45 minutes, and we just presented 30. But we have maps of those too.
Yeah. Matt, online?
Sure. Thank you. I'm a Woodstock board representative. Sorry I can't be there tonight. I'm traveling this week. I've looked at the maps, and I guess I would just ask that a message maybe you could take back to the redistricting committee would be to think about building larger, more efficient districts around the best schools in the state, or around the districts that have performed, the best. And, think of it more of like a little bit more of a merit base, like schools that, like Woodstock. I think people in this room will tell you that they moved here for the school. We have probably the best college placement in the state as of last year. It's just incredible. 19 APs, what we offer in terms of arts and theater, and the different sports programming. If you really look at what we've built here through these mergers and just through the history of Woodstock education, why not build districts around the best schools instead of it being about career technology centers or just pure driving times? I would just really encourage you to look at what schools are thriving and have improved in their standardized test and have filled their special education positions. If you just did it on the merits, I think the map would show our region as a hub high school. Thank you.
Any other board members? Yes, Seth.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for your work on the task force and the legislature, and thanks for recognizing Sherry's work on both to make us a regional, the model of regional health. If you will indulge me, I have 3 brief questions.
That's why I'm here.
One, if this is sort of is about legislative action. You've noted that you're advisory only, you're going to make some recommendations, you're struggling to make those recommendations. It's hard to find data to make data-based recommendations. It's hard to see the numbers in terms of achieving the goals Act 73 has laid out, achieving savings for, to ultimately lower taxes to citizens, to residents. If you were a betting woman, what bet would you place that the legislature actually acts on any of the proposals this session?
I can't answer that. I really can't. What I can encourage you to do is talk to your legislators.
Oh, yeah, we are.
And
Oh, yeah,
communicate to them what.
You'll be shocked to know, Seth.
Yes. I don't know. I mean, what we are working to do, we have better data now than I've seen in 2 sessions, 2 biennia in the House Education Committee. And so we actually have some information now that we haven't seen before that speak to both some of the challenges and some of the opportunities. And we have been trying to be disciplined if we're going to make a recommendation that there's going to be some research behind it, both in Vermont data, but also, from the national literature. And so my hope is that people will look at that and that will prevail. But I think we're in such a terrible moment nationally. I mean, I just want to be clear. This is going to be rough no matter what we do. I mean, the U.S. Department of Education is a garbage shout. They've shut down a bunch of divisions. They've gotten rid of the OCR. They're getting rid of any oversight for special education. They're probably going to run it as a block grant out of, AHS. AWE is going to lose capacity. I mean, we keep asking the Secretary of Education but she can't even tell us what positions are federally funded at the Agency of Education. They're not going to all be there. And so we're trying to get that data because part of our calculus is if we start this, can we even finish this? Because I'm not sure we can. Because if they are going to lose 40 more positions, and when she set up her map, her transformation team is a standalone division to manage mergers. I'm sorry, I was there during Act 46. It is every division. It is not a standalone because it has to go through every single function your school district does. Just the fact she set it up as a standalone department shows me she doesn't know what a merger is. She has no one on her team who's been through a merger. We had 5 at the agency when we tried to manage Act 46, and we thought we were failing. We thought we couldn't do it. We didn't have the capacity. So I worry that we actually don't even understand what we're taking on. And I think as the superintendents in the task force have talked more, has given people a little bit more caution. Not all, but some of them. So I don't know. I don't know. But I think, and part of it is like, I mean, I was being perhaps more blunt than I should be, but the same day Jared Kushner said, just get to yes, we'll figure out the details. That's the day Zoe Saunders came in and said, no, I'm not giving you the data on DAs. You just need to come up with maps, get to yes, and we'll figure out the details. I'm like, again, these are kids. Why would we organize around the DAs if you can't even tell us what the relationship is or if they're working? So I think we all have to acknowledge we have shared problems. The cost problem is real. It is serious. We cannot afford what's coming. People are not going to be able to afford healthcare. A lot of that health services are all falling back into the ed fund. One of the reasons support services are going up, state's been cutting support for state mental health. Where do you think that goes? It goes into the ed fund. And this is coming. We are all going to be challenged in ways that we can't even fully anticipate. All of us, you, me, everybody. And we're going to have to really decide what we care about for our kids. And we're going to have to be working very disciplined, diligent way to make sure we're caring, not just for the people who can care for themselves, because some of us are going to be fine, but also for the kids who really depend on your school. They depend on your school. They depend on your school to eat. They depend on it for connection to mental health. They depend on it for basic connection to opportunity and then to get into all those colleges that you're placing them into. We're going to have to really pay attention to that. So I don't know, but I have to trust my colleagues are aware of those dynamics as well. Yeah.
The second question is, as you know, we're developing a new proposal to fund the rebuilding of this middle and high school. One question that came up from one of our towns was, what happens if we pass that, but our town gets redistricted out? And we said, when we're advocating that doesn't happen, we don't think it will, but the Agency of Education has to deliver some recommendations to the legislature on the 15th of December about how debt would be reapportioned if towns that are redistricted. And then the legislature would have to adopt that. Is that accurate for our folks to think about?
So I want to just acknowledge, you are also not the only, there are places where mergers do make sense. They really do. And what is frustrating to me is that this process has put all of those on pause right now because people are waiting to see what happens because they're afraid of exactly the question that you're asking about. The bill does ask her to come up with recommendations on debt allocation and facilities. And this is a tough issue. And, it's kind of like when you get married, you marry the whole person, right? With everything. And in the same way, some people bring deteriorated buildings, some people bring spanking new buildings. One's got debt, one's got no debt, like a terrible building. So I think there's a lot that has to be talked about both ways there. They are bringing back recommendations. I wish I could give you a clear answer.
Yeah,
I can't.
it's
What I do want to say is that your district, this conversation that you are proposing to have about a possible merger to create a regional high school was actually what was intended to be behind that designated map and of regional high school. So whether or not that map, and if you look, depending which document you look at, you either see a district cut or not. And that's because there was a lot of last minute work. The timeline has been unbelievable, the pressure. It's going to come back, but your district, that conversation was part of the conversation that led to that effort to try to map where regional high schools could be located. And the intention was always that you would be one of those regions that would be considered. So I will bring your feedback back to Jay Adams, who's doing that modeling, and just, I think he's well aware of it. I'll forward again the memo that you sent, so that's top of mind.
The last question is, middle and high schools are big, vital economic engines in rural communities, and there's a lot of data that shows that. And for us, for example, we're the second largest employer in the region, 250 full-time, part-time jobs. We're a big reason that we attract and retain families, that helps grow our grand list, keep our property values strong. And we've seen lots of examples in rural communities like Maine, upstate New York, Vermont, and even places like Arkansas where property values dramatically dropped when schools left. And also the school is a great asset to attract more businesses in search of a skilled workforce. Because they want their kids to have a place to get educated. And finally, there's a lot of social benefits. It's really it's the heart and soul of our community. And so are these factors being considered at all in terms of the negative economic impact Is that part of the conversation at all?
It is very much on people's minds. To be clear, again, it's a redistricting task force. It's not a reschooling task force. So decisions about how you operate and how many schools you operate, those are still at the district level. So
That's an
we could
important
draw,
distinction.
it's a very important.
We've
distinction.
been trying to say that.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
about administrative at this point. It's not about facility.
Correct. It is
Right.
not about facilities at all. The concern about cutting a district is that you actually are going to the administrative capability to do the partnerships you're talking about.
course.
So that's where it comes into us. If you wanted to do something, but we separated you, you wouldn't be able to do it. That was where that came into the concern. But I think, just to be really clear, all the decisions that are normally made by school boards would still be made by school boards if there was a redistricting there.
Yep.
But this would just, the fact that you're discussing it, if people think they might be moved away, they're not gonna do any work right now. So that's the problem. What we've done is we've extended this period of volatility where people are sort of in suspended animation, waiting for some clarity from the legislature so they know whether they can continue with the work they're planning to do. Yeah, no, I hear you. It's real, it's serious. There's no construction aid.
But I think that's really important. I mean, that's really important for everybody to understand that this Act 73 does not
It does not
mandate
touch
facilities closures. When we say we want to work with Hartford or Windsor, that just means we want to share administrative resources. It doesn't mean we're trying to share facilities. And I think that's been confusing for people in the public that I've heard.
100%. There is an exception. So for example, if you do the CTE map that was put on the table, I'm just gonna pick another district. It's like so painful for you here. But yeah, look at Caledonia County and the CTE around St. Johnsbury Academy. That district is almost all school choice district. It has one public high school standing still with town, the school of Danville. If that became a single district, they would have to vote. Are we going to have school choice or are we going to operate? And they would effectively close Danville. So choosing to approve that district is choosing to close Danville High School because Danville would be outvoted. It's a small voice in a big district. So we are thinking about it because we are understanding that any decision is going to have huge repercussions. And it makes me very uncomfortable making recommendations that we don't know what those repercussions are. And I think you're hearing that if you listen to the task force meetings. You're hearing that over and over and over.
Thank you. Anna, online.
Good evening. My name's Anna. I'm a Reading representative within the Mountain View School District. Thank you so much for being here. I had a couple questions and they've been answered along the way. So I wanted to just hold this time for gratitude to you for representing so well and taking this to heart and not just pushing the numbers and checking the boxes. I've had a couple of constituents ask that if I'm the only one that has the chance to verbalize gratitude, that I am doing that for you. I did have a quick question on the map. So I'll speak just for myself, but it's clear that one of the maps put forth is a front runner in front of the others. Do you imagine that when these maps get voted on, that would be the final map, or would that just be the map that, then funnels forward as the building or the foundation for some evolution or adjustments to the map?
Are you talking about the shared services regions?
I'm just saying the maps in general. As we move forward, it sounds like there's going to be up to 3 maps that are, put forth by your task force, and that the voting body would then vote on it. But then once that vote is complete, if there's a map that has been agreed upon, would that be the map in its final form, or would it then continue to see evolutions to improve its design?
So I think just to be really clear, we're an advisory body, so we can recommend to the legislature, these are the 3 maps that we landed on. They can do anything they want. They can do anything they want when those maps go back to the body. One of the maps, the shared services map, we are aware that it doesn't work for every region. And so in that proposal, it says we're going to start with the base regions associated with the VSA, because that is one recognizing, organizing structure that people sort of recognize. But we also know that there's been some realignment. So for example, in the Orange East region, because of shifts in alignment under Act 46 and other things, in some ways they're more aligned towards the central region instead of the VSA region, which that map puts them in. So what we're acknowledging is that there will be a process by which supervisory unions and districts could request realignment across the BOCES, to find one that is closer to where they are. Again, these are very complex relationships. People have very complex local relationships that are driven by geography and roads and commute patterns, access to services. I have no illusion that I can sit in Waterbury with 10 other people around the table and know what all of those are. So we're trying to build in some flexibility for realignment where possible. With the district maps, the CTE maps, I think Scott Beck is saying he's going to try to rearrange some of those borders, but again, it says district means one thing. A district is not the same as a supervisory unit. We have to see where he lands on that, but I would say I don't even know what that map is at this point, but he'll come back at the next meeting with a little bit more clarity. And at I think the other two are very much in the hypothetical recommendation phase, and they really don't come with maps at this point. And I don't know what the task force will do, and anyone who says they do, they got a bridge to sell you in Brooklyn, or maybe across the Connecticut River. Except that way New Hampshire will pay for it.
Thank you. Sarit?
Hi, thanks for being here. I'm Sarah, I'm here in Woodstock. And I'm just wondering about where the body is in terms of taxing second homeowners appropriately.
This is one of the good things in the bill. So one of the things the bill, you want to talk about that, Charlie?
And we've talked about it before, yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of, it creates the ability to tax second homeowners at a different rate other than primary homeowners, gives the legislature the ability to set those rates for 3 different kinds of properties. And so it doesn't say what those rates are, but it gives the legislature the ability to do that. So it's in the process of doing some of the research for the tax department to put those systems in place to have it possible. Not next year, but the year after.
It's actually hard, it's proved harder to break the base. And so we're showing a lot of due diligence on the tax side. It would be nice if we could do that on the governance side, but it's, we're trying to figure out how to break the base with the idea of doing that. And for people who are watching, this is a real issue in some parts of the town. And the person next to you, I know I've spoken to people in my own community who bought property because our property values are growing at 15% a year. Someone said to me, well, it's a hedge on the stock market. Meanwhile, they're Airbnb at 5 times a year to pay their property taxes, and they're paying a rate that's a fraction of what the next door neighbor is. This is a real problem. And in a state where 1 in 5 homes is a second home, but we're in a housing emergency, you want to talk about how to refill our schools? Good place to start, that in healthcare.
We agree. By the way, Montana just passed a tax on second homeowners to deal with to address their housing crisis. So you can do it here to deal with school funding.
Yes, I would love to take that for a permanent source of funding for housing. And sadly, it's already been, that's all property tax is pretty designated for the ed fund. It's a challenge. That is a tension that we have.
I'm gonna challenge you with that. I'm
Good, well, we will have this robust discussion.
We will.
Because I'd love to take that.
Another category, in fact, I looked it up before I came because I knew you were gonna say that. Another category that's a big expenditure out of the ed fund is what are called property tax expenditures.
Right.
And those increased by 22 million. That's one of the biggest drivers of increased cost, right? In the ed fund. That's not education, and neither is CHIP.
Yeah.
So we're now allowing up to $200 million a year in revenue to be withheld from the ed fund to pay for infrastructure. It's not targeted.
That's right.
And that is going to raise property taxes on everybody
You can
else.
get into a debate about that.
Yeah, we will.
I've seen the Killington numbers up and down. You can explain that to me in another way. I'll have that argument.
Any of the board members have a comment or a question?
I just wanted to note a couple things. One is that I suggested that there be a forum once the task force actually makes a recommendation, its final recommendation.
Yeah, I think we're
community.
going
I think
some
it's in
discussion.
process. I think people are working on it.
Yeah.
So I've mentioned it to
Yes.
the school board and also the superintendent to find the right venue for it. There'll probably be a lot of people that will want to attend.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that one of the maps, please verify that got rejected was organized by county. That was early on,
I
right?
think it was perceived as just duplicative of CTE. I mean, it's actually not that different. There's pretty much it pretty much was so close to the CTE map, it didn't make sense to do both of those, because either we're gonna accept or we're not gonna accept something on that scale.
And there's one point of clarification.
The other map that was rejected was a single statewide operating district,
Right.
Um,
and the governor's map was
And the
rejected.
5, yeah. And the other part is about state aid for school construction. It was included in the bill, but not funded.
No, originally, the penalty that districts like this one would pay if they tried to spend 5% above the foundation level was going to be redirected to school construction. And then
Yes,
after
right.
the conference
The
committee
supplemental district funding, yeah.
chose to redirect that to tax abatements
Yeah.
in other towns, not this town, that were
Right.
going to be seeing increases in spending. This bill's not good for this town.
It sounds like we should take our future into our own hands and keep moving.
I think you should, we can't give you any guarantees at this moment. I think we always have to be doing what we can. That's good. And I think my one caution would be that we all have to think bigger than ourselves right now. Because, this state, I think, is the 12th most dependent on federal transfers. We use more, during the pandemic, we had the highest federal spending per capita in the country. We are very dependent on the federal government. That money is starting to dry up. We're gonna be having tough conversations. I'm not gonna lie to you. And so I think the question is how we all are gonna, whether it's through Act 73 or something else, through local initiatives like your own, we're all gonna be asking hard questions about how we work together in different ways. The reason I'm so excited about the BOCES is it's a way to let go of some stuff and do better with less. Because we're all gonna have to find some creative ways to do better with less, and we're gonna have to do it sooner, not in 5 years. We're gonna have to figure this out in the next 3 years, some of it. I'm not trying to be a downer. I have great faith that we can protect what we love the most, including our kids. But don't kid yourself, we're gonna have to do some work.
Yeah, and I mean, just to go to Rebecca's point, the rest of the session is going to be brutal. I mean, a third of our state budget is federal money. Lots of that, depending on the appropriations federally, once they actually get to work together. We're exposed on all sorts of fronts, and we're gonna be having life, death, housing, heating discussions at the state level, because we thought it was very exciting. We saved $100 million for these dark federal days of cuts. And we're actually exposed at the $3 billion level. I mean, we already, with the vouchers, if you look at the reductions in housing vouchers and everything, we cannot afford to keep feeding Vermonters in need, heating Vermonters in need, housing Vermonters in need. It's going to be a tough conversation this year, because those are the kinds of conversations we're going to be having.
And it's connected in ways that I don't even think the body has full understanding. One of the examples I give, and the reason I've been pushing and pushing and pushing on the DA data for the designated agencies or the regional agencies that provide mental health.
For everybody to remind them, designated agency here is the HCRS.
Yeah.
Human, yeah.
But they count on, they call it the general fund match, the state match. It's school district money. And they count on this, they use the money that districts pay them to pull down a Medicaid match. If that Medicaid match goes away, I don't know how that state safety net stays stable. I mean, really don't. And so people don't think about that because they only think about their own budget, but their budget is dependent on, we're all interdependent in ways that we're just really gonna have to understand in the next couple days. What I just keep coming back to is every kid is a Vermont kid. Every family is a Vermont family. They're all our neighbors. We just have to really take a deep breath and figure out what we're gonna do together to try to make it better. I'm gonna try my best to do that at the task force. I am so grateful. Sherry, you've been a lifeline in so many ways. I'm so grateful to the board for the thoughtful input that you had. And I hope you will continue to give us feedback. I do read it all. I don't get back to it all in time sometimes, I'm trying, but it really does make a difference. And I really hope we can do something that helps us all be stronger as we go through the next thing.
Sherry, did you want to say something?
No, I was just, we've had to develop BOCES because we don't have an agency of education. We, superintendents just had to step into it and figure out other ways because we can't defer to an agency that's been so big. And that's why the assessment superintendents have stepped into it. We just don't have it as a resource. And so we are having to compensate because we don't have an agency of education, which costs money. So it becomes this spiral that is really, really tragic.
Sherry
So
said it, Sherry said
counterproductive.
it, I didn't say it.
Yeah.
But I would say that there's other advantages too, like if you think about it, it gives you regional capacity. We have some incredibly smart people working in school districts. They can develop good things. You can even share them across BOCES. It's much easier to do across 5 BOCES than it is across 119 districts. So there's opportunities here for better sharing. The other thing is from the agency's point of view, instead of dealing with all individual districts, there's some things they could just deal with the BOCES on. So it gives them 5 points of contact instead of, 56 points of contact on something. CTE has changed, and I hear the comment online, but CTE is STEM engineering. Project Lead the Way, the engineering program, that was designed for high schools, not for CTEs. We just delivered in CTEs. That's great programming for kids who want to do anything. And, my point is, the BOCES will let us think more flexibly about what it means to push high quality education into school districts. And I just think we all need to think a little bigger right now and where scale makes sense and where it doesn't make sense. There are places where it doesn't make a difference. And there's very little evidence that above about, anywhere from 1,500 to 3,000, above that, there's very little evidence that you're going to see savings. So you're going to do a lot of work, you're going to spend a lot of money, you may not get benefit. If we need it now, where are we going to get it?
All right, I'll just finish by saying that from our standpoint, we can't wait any longer for a school. And so we are committing to move forward and see what we can do with a bond. And we're desperately hoping that the decoupling from taking the capital spend out of the per pupil cost will happen swiftly, so that districts like us who would like to put a bond forward in March with the hopes of breaking ground in the summer, we can wait for the state to come up with the 25 to 30% or whatever they're going to put in. We understand there's the probability of a look back for that. We can wait for that, but we can't wait much longer. Violet Joe will go over there, the buildings and grounds manager speak. We'll be here for another hour. But we already know we have to put forward a $2 million bond this summer just to fix septic systems and roofs.
I feel like your buildings were misplaced a decade ago.
Oh,
So I'm kind of, or maybe 2 decades ago.
Probably.
So I'm with you, I hear you. And I have brought your district up multiple times. So,
No, I mean, it's a serious subject that, we've heard a lot of things here so far that are kind of scary about the future of our state, the future of our communities across the whole state, the many problems that are in danger of not getting funding because of the federal government, et cetera. And, if my only takeaway where we can't do anything, I would have to say we just might as well just close our doors and give up. But nobody wants to do that. This board is committed, the communities are rallying, there's a lot of meetings going on, a lot of energy being pushed forward to try to educate all that. It's not this is the nicest room probably in the whole facility because it's new. So people look here and say, well, it's not that bad here, but actually, those of you who come and visit on the 18th, when the ed committee Senate Ed committee comes, we can have the opportunity to walk around and look at the problems firsthand. And so anyway, thank you, but I would like to open it for public comment. I'm going to ask Sarit to time people for 2 minutes. Normally we give 3, but with this many people, I think we're going to have to go with 2 minutes. A hard 2-minute stop, please. And you've had a lot of information shared tonight, so maybe your questions are answered, but if you want to make a statement, that is also fine.
And Carrie, you mentioned decoupling, so I just wanted to thank our delegation for their
Commitment.
future leadership on that issue. Thank you for meeting with us and helping to work with us on decoupling.
and I will take the comments I've heard back tonight to the task force as well. Thank you very much for your feedback.
Thank you. All right, I saw one hand online. I don't know where that hand went.
Yeah.
I think it was Karen.
Yeah, it was
It's
Karen
Tom Ayers.
Humphreys.
Tom has a question.
Tom Ayers from.
Good
Vermont.
evening, everyone. It's Tom Ayers from the Vermont Standard newspaper. And I just had a quick question, Representative Holcomb. about the shared services map and redistricting concept. In the context of the discussions that you've had about that, has there been discussion about where high schools and tech centers might be located within the context of a shared services concept?
Am I allowed to answer? Yes, yeah, the shared services map is agnostic to what sits underneath it. So it could exist in our current universe with no change at all and get to work right away. So it's sort of, they're not linked necessarily. Some of the other pieces have we've been looking at where we have high schools and where encouraging, there's several parts of the state, I mentioned a couple, there's a couple others, where people are having very similar conversations. You are not alone in the conversation you're having. And those have come up, and they've also come up in the context of very small rural schools. I mean, Canaan, there's no way that school will ever be school. It's just 45 minutes from anything. And so there is a powerful role for a shared services model if it develops a service, or if it could push in, very skilled evaluators. There are kinds of things that Canaan cannot buy on its own. But if it was part of a consortium or a cooperative, those are services that would suddenly become available to them, even though they're very small and isolated. So what it does is it allows it's an amplifier, if you will. It allows smaller systems to do more with what they have, because they can pull from the cooperative to amplify what they can do. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. You're probably aware that MVS and Mountain View Supervisory Union is involved in forming one of the first BOCES in the state. So, and my understanding is that the shared services model is kind of patterned after the BOCES model that's been successful in other states. Is that correct?
Not only that, the articles of agreement that you drafted are the model articles of agreement that are referred to in the plan.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna go back and forth between Zoom and the floor here, so if there's a person who would like to make a comment, please. When you raise your hand and are recognized, please say your name and the town that you are coming from. Yes.
Hi, my name is Kayla McCarthy. I'm coming from Woodstock, and my family just moved here in August for this school district. And I keep hearing that you're losing population, and I can't help but think, like, if the school district were to change substantially, and I understand that funding cuts are coming down the line, and that's a reality anywhere that we would move to. But honestly, like, the high school was already like, it was sort of on like the bottom tier of of the school districts that we were looking at. That being said, like, I've lived in the Northeast Kingdom and I did not move back there for a reason, because of the school districts there. Like, there's a reason we came to Woodstock, and it would just be really disheartening to have just moved here and frankly put back on the table moving again if like drastic things were to change in such a way that it felt like it would compromise my children's educational experience and well-being and preparedness for the future. And so I would just hope that that would be brought back to this board, that if you're wanting to have these vibrant communities where there is retention, then we really do have to prioritize these models that are going to serve our students. Like, I'm not interested in my children being on a bus at all. There's a reason why I'm chose to live so close to the school itself, so that I could drive them every single day. Like, these factors that make such a huge difference in decision-making for families. And so because I'm so new here, I haven't had the opportunity to write yet, and just really wanted to be here to make sure that that perspective was being held in the decision-making process.
Thank you very much. It very much is. And I would just say again, please remember, this is just an advisory group. It could be nothing happens. We don't know. And Vermont, nothing in this conversation is something we haven't done 2,500 times before. So I would really strongly discourage anyone from making hasty decisions right now.
I just unpacked like my laptop.
No, I hear you.
So.
I hear you. I'm sure you're a great place, great community. Hang with it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Karen DeFrizio.
Marlena, unmute.
There we go, there we go. I got it to turn on. Hi, Karen DePrizio, Woodstock. Thank you for sharing this information tonight. And I don't remember who just spoke, but I have a similar, I missed her name before she spoke. I appreciate your share as well. I just wanted to ask, and I appreciate what it feels like is that there's so many things that are, it's like we're taking momentum and moving forward. Everybody, the task force putting so much work into it, and then all of our communities are doing so much work to follow along. And I looked at the 3 maps, and some of them are clearer than others. So of course there were a lot of questions from those. And even from what I've heard this evening, it's unclear to me whether redistricting means sharing administration, sharing resources, or the traveling and really changing where our schools are and where the centers of our town exist. So it's a lot, that is a lot of variables for everybody, to each parent to take on right now and follow along with. And I will say that I know people that have moved already, because they're, some people are hopeful, some people are, getting involved, and some people are moving. And the reality is they're to be across the country, we're going to be coming into a lot of hard decisions, and I understand those decisions, but I feel like I was wondering if the committee and or our legislators have talked to realtors in terms of how this would impact our overall our housing market. And I think that if we do have a big impact on our housing market, the money we're talking about trying to stretch right now isn't going to exist. And I also understand that
Pretty much out of time.
Okay. The level of, I'll just want to finish with this, the level of our school versus these other issues that are extreme, like whether people can have housing are very important, but we have to look at them as individual issues.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room? Yes, Jason, and then there's a hand in the back.
I just had a question about the amount of flexibility there might be to create customized solutions, because it doesn't seem like a one size fits all model is going to really work here. And we have a really great thing going in our district. People come here, as you heard, because I don't live in Northeast Kingdom, I don't live in Brattleboro or Bennington, I chose here. And I chose to raise my children here because of the quality of the school, because of the programming, the people here. And there's a lot of depressing things going on at the national level, but Vermont is a place that's in very high demand. This community in particular is in very high demand because of what it offers. I think we have to kind of flip this on end and say, Vermont has a lot of incredible things going for it that are counter to what's going on the national landscape. What we need to fix is education. What we need to do is invest in high-performing districts, as Matt Stout said. Let's take a possibility mindset instead of kind of a scarcity mindset, because what we have is in high demand. And so the question is there going to be some flexibility to create kind of custom solutions that work for districts and kind of benefit all to advance towards these very amorphous goals that exist.
First of all, just again, we only get to draw maps. I wish I could do housing policy. Unfortunately, it's not part of our mandate on the committee. And I am struck by the irony on this committee. I was an administrator in the Rivendell School District when it formed, something like, don't I forget, 30 years ago, because I'm really old now. But at that time, we were at our population peak, and we were being told by every school in the area that there was no room for our kids. So we formed a brand new school, we built a new high school. And here we are, and they've lost 40% of the population. But what I've always said, what I said at the beginning of Act 46 is, don't think about this year, don't think about next year, think about 20 years. Because, we are the oldest second oldest state in the nation. We won't be forever, right? And people are moving here. And so you want to think about how you build a vibrant future. That has to be part of the plan. And housing has to be part of that plan. Healthcare, we need healthcare reform. It has to be part of our plan. And then the rest of the pieces will fall in place. So I think it's going to take all of these things. Unfortunately, in this committee, all we're doing is drawing maps. But
can they be custom maps?
if you look at the strategic merger map, it's not saying this is the map. It's saying these are guidelines. This is what the research says about district size and types of mergers that are. It's not saying you have to merge, you have to merge, you have to merge. It's just saying these are places where we should facilitate and support conversations around potential partnerships, because it just makes sense. I mean, we have districts that are donuts around a whole. You know, they could be a single district, and they all have buildings. I mean, so there's lots of places where the way we are just doesn't really make sense. My own district of Norwich, we used to have 18 school districts in Norwich. And then we got snow plows, paved roads, and school buses. And now we have one district and one big elementary school downtown. Things change. They don't necessarily change for the worse. And part of it is people have to lean in and say, okay, what does make sense? That's what you're trying to do. And we sure better not get in the way of that, because that's where the good ideas come forward.
I guess that was my question.
Yeah, so my hope is that any plan is accommodating local initiative. And there are several places that have said, this is what we're working on. This is in line with what you're talking about, but it's actually grounded in, reality on the ground. So I feel like we have a responsibility.
And sometimes we hear blanket assumptions like, oh, population is declining across the state. It doesn't really apply to our situation, or, not to the same degree. We're one of those few.
With the exception of 5 towns, and you are not one of them, everybody has lost population since 2000. But it will change again. It will change again, presumably, and housing would change it again too, or addressing second homes might change it again. I mean, one of the reasons housing values in Norwich are going up 15% a year, it's not because of anything other than the fact that we have a housing shortage. That's a problem.
Yeah. So I just make a point for what.
Yeah, and that's the same.
That's the same here.
Absolutely the same here too.
Make a point for what Matt Stout said was for the district to look at high performing schools in districts and grow from those.
Yeah.
Those methods.
It's pretty hard to know what a high performing school is. I'm just gonna say, because there are some schools, like we were up in Winooski, which may have some of the lower test scores in the state, but they have something like 40% English language learners. And it is you cannot school, because they're really doing great things for the kids. In fact, the same great things that your school is trying to do for your kids too. So it's a tricky conversation. I'm just gonna say that. Yeah. And what's great, I mean, I keep thinking about the fact that my electrician makes more than I do. I don't know. I think we've also got to evaluate what is great and what opportunities. I have a son who graduated from high school. I'm going to tell you, people graduating from college, there's no entry level jobs anymore. And anyone who's in the field of data science or coding or economics, they're all gone. AI, boom. We have to rethink what it means to help kids be prepared for the next century.
Ann Butler, online.
Hey, yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Ann Butler. I'm a resident of Plymouth. One of the main reasons that my husband and I choose to raise our family here is because of the wonderful public school system that we have access to through Mountain View Supervisory. We're really concerned that some of these redistricting proposals suggest pulling our supervisory union apart, and I've heard others express this tonight as well. It's been proposed that Plymouth is cut out of Mountain Views, and we really strongly oppose this. We're deeply invested in the community that we have here. We have a wonderful community. I understand the need to spend education dollars responsibly, and I really support careful, thoughtful efforts to do so. But any redistricting plan that tears current unions and districts apart are going to disproportionately hurt small rural communities like ours in Plymouth. We and others are going to choose to live elsewhere. Population is going to continue to fall. So I urge everyone to support efforts that will keep Mountain View Supervisory intact. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I will just tell you, the Senator Beck has insisted or said he would look at existing boundaries and make sure that they were accommodated. But again, I don't even know if that map is gonna go forward. None of us knows at this point.
Okay, I think I saw your hand next. Yes.
Hi, Gina Kirkova from Pomfret, mom of two. How are you looking at expected financial savings when evaluating the maps? Like, how much in-depth data are you gonna rely on? What kind of questions are you gonna ask as you make up your mind what to ultimately put forward?
So the purpose in the strategic map was, it was really a thought exercise. It was trying to get at whether we even have the capacity to model that in our group. And the agency was, I can't tell you, I mean, when you think about what's different about Act 73 and Act 46, the Act 46 asks districts to look at their data, which they have, and to look at opportunities and then make recommendations. This is asking a task force of 11 people in 8 meetings with incomplete data to model costs. It can't be done. I'm just gonna tell you, it can't be done. The examples that we were able to put forward were ones where we took 2 towns that don't operate any public schools. And if you can merge them into a district like Bennington, Rutland, because they don't have teachers, so you don't have to deal with contracts and leveling up contracts. And we can just see roughly, we can ballpark how much they could save if they threw 86 tuition kids into their existing schools, which they're contemplating closing because they have excess capacity. And we know they could accommodate them probably without hiring a single teacher. But most of the state is not clear, right? Like, it's not easy. So one of the conversations that came up at the last meeting was, if you go forward with this legislature, here's actually the modeling you would need to be able to do to even know if this was going to hurt or help.
And is it sort of accurate to conclude that you guys kind of are casting a blind eye to the proposed financial savings? Because you just don't have the data and the numbers.
Who is we, or who is
once you advise on a map, on a guidance?
I think the committee, the task force has been, I mean, what we are saying is, in order to even understand the fiscal impacts, you would need to look at these things. We're not being blind to that. In fact, that's why we looked at the research, and we were very careful to look at the research about what the research says about where savings are even likely.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm saying that what is called for, you know, someone in the committee said it felt like Act 73 gave us a solution. Now we're trying to fit it back to reality.
Right.
That reality isn't there. Like, there's a gap between what we're being asked to do and what the research and best practice says is good practice. So we're just going to point that out.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else online?
And there's, did Ann Butler go?
Yeah.
Oh, no, she did.
And
Yeah.
both,
Yeah, she
Anna,
went both,
Anna
they both
and
went,
Ann.
yeah.
Came back.
Anna, did you want to say something more?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, as we, I don't know if we're ready to wrap up this section, but before Representative Holcomb steps away, if we could wrap this up with maybe like the top 3 things our community members who are here in person, online, and will watch in the future, what the most 3 effective things that we can do as community members to support the task force and support our voices being heard for what path forward we would like you to take.
That's a question that you folks, right? Anna, you're asking what the legislative people here, that what can we do? What are 3 effective things we can do?
Perfect. Yes, thank you. As community members, I'm a school board member. However, I know that a lot of my constituents are here and they're going to ask me. And so I would love to have direct response from our representatives and elected officials on what those top 3 things would be.
We've already done one. I mean, I think you've already led very proactively, which has been great in asserting what you are in the process of doing, and the conversation you're entertaining in terms of cooperating with other districts under this shared services model.
If I can clarify.
So I think that's number 1. You've done a great thing by proactively entering the conversation and putting that idea forward. I think I thought that was great. I'm so proud.
If I can clarify, I don't disagree with what you're saying. What I would like is for what community members could do, not necessarily school boards or school board members, but the larger population who are here spending their evenings with us to learn more and find out what we can do to help guide the process forward.
I'll give a couple. There is, can I ask you?
Yes.
Yeah, please. So there will be a couple more task force meetings. We're gonna schedule a second hearing, is my understanding, probably after November 10th. At the next meeting, we're kind of gonna have to narrow in a little bit on what are possible things that are gonna move forward. And I will make sure I send it to your, the information on that, and you can attend it remotely.
Yeah, going to the public.
We don't have the date yet, so I can't give it to you right now, but I will pass it on to your leadership so that they can share it with the community. Show up. I mean, it does make a difference. It really does. We've had a pretty big turnout. You can also email us, and I have read every single letter. It's a lot. Your personal letters, not a form letter, is much more powerful. And I can send the email address to use to your leadership so that they can forward that to the community as well. I think giving voice to that is helpful. And I think talking about what we can do as opposed to just what we can't do.
Yes, that.
So frame it as in what's working. And you have what was so compelling about what your school board did is you weren't saying, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. You were saying, we are doing this for our kids and communities. This is good work. This is exactly what you've asked. And that makes it very easy for us to say, yes, this is what we need to make possible. So we have to create space for it. So I would definitely lean into that. And I would encourage you to talk to your keep sitting on your elected leaders. Because that's how they represent you in the body.
But for this stage, I think being in touch with the task force at this moment, but please be in touch with all of us so that we can, because we have fairly strong relationships with all the people on the task force, we can certainly help make sure they're elevated and heard. But attending the public hearing is, I think, the one thing everybody can do.
Right. And I'll pass that information on to people. So I think that's probably the easiest way to get it out.
There's two parts, just to make sure that, to Anna's question. There's the task force making the recommendations, and there's the legislature. We're gonna have the Senate Education Committee here for a community meeting at 2:45 on November the 18th. We have 425 seats in the auditorium. If people from the district turn out to show their support, to show their concern, and help us tell the story of how we're taking the lead and serving as a model district, that will be very powerful. So November 18th at 2:45.
But the other thing I would say is when the task force.
Right when we pick up our kids.
Yeah, we didn't schedule it. It was a Senate Education Committee, but we're glad to have those.
So when the task force makes its final 3 recommendations, is to really weigh in on it. I mean, that forum is going to be really important, and which of those works for the school district, which of them works for the schools, for the community, and then that's really when trying to influence the legislature after that.
Right.
That's going to be really important.
So we're hoping to have that forum after the task force makes
The
its
task
3.
force is scheduling another forum. We've already had 4 public forums.
Right.
We're going to do another one because we want to try to maximize the opportunity. Yeah, for input. I will say, I'm going to tell you, I am surprised by how much there's a lot of traction. A lot of people really believe that merging to 4,000 to 8,000 students in the district is going to save the state a lot of money. I'm just going to tell you that has tremendous traction statewide. So think about that.
Beth, I know you had a hand up back there.
Yes, my question is, once the recommendations are narrowed down to 1 or 2 or 3 from the community, will our board look at those and contact everyone and say, this is what we endorsed, or this is what we think we should be backing, so that we're not really looking and sorting through it ourselves, but you've had the eye on it?
Yes, we'll be watching everything very carefully.
Okay. And communicating that back to
communicating, yes. I think there was, yes?
I'm Kristen Oates from Comfort. Can you just remind on the timelines, like how long am I going to be anxiety filled? Like, is it, like January, you go back to session, that's when you're going to present your suggestions, and then how long will the legislation then take to make a decision? And then what is the implementation of it? Like I have a junior, like what's going to happen to him next year?
It won't affect me. The reality
Right, is it next year? Is it 2 years, 5 years?
I mean,
Like the
it's, first of all, again, it's, let's assume
that governance reform happens, it still takes time, and it's just governance. It's not changing. Your child will show up at school and will not experience anything different. Governance means we're just drawing bigger circles around our schools. It doesn't mean that you're gonna suddenly lose your school. I mean, if you think about, I mean, it was interesting at one of the forums, and thank you for your comment, for clarifying, but one of the things that people didn't realize is there actually are advantages to bigger districts. Some people don't realize that. And when you became a bigger district, people actually could go to the elementary school that was closest to where they were.
Right.
That's not school choice as we think of it. That's that your district is bigger, has more than one elementary schools, and it's allowing you to accommodate the needs within the district. So because it's a bigger boundaries, there may be different things that can happen, but it doesn't mean any of those buildings that you love and call the place that takes care of your child is going to disappear or change. And I think the concern about governance reform is that what it does is it takes your board and your administration's bandwidth and it puts it into mergers instead of putting it into making teaching better. And I think that's going to be one of the primary impacts. And so I wish that this was not, and again, I voted against this bill. I think that we do need to have hard conversations about what to do. I wish we weren't doing it this way, because I think it's creating much more stress than it needs to create. But I'm hoping that the legislature can move decisively and quickly to end this process so people aren't in suspended animation. I mean, it's a harm. It's a harm to keep people in this position.
Yeah. Unknowns are
I
always.
am acutely aware of that. And it pains me every day. It pains me that people are just waiting to figure out what's going to happen, because that's time that they aren't spending moving forward. So I will do my best to push it. I think hopefully your other leaders will as well, and hopefully we can not be in this position next year.
So just to put a time frame on it, we go back into session on January 6th. And the bill will probably originate in the House Education Committee on taking the recommendations from the redistricting task force, and they'll go through the deliberations. Visit what they recommended, why, call witnesses, that kind of stuff. And when they come out of that committee, may be exactly what they recommended, but probably not, given the legislative process. And then it goes to the full floor of the legislature, House. They pass it, send it over to the Senate. The Senate that considers the same bill. They will, of course, agree with the House because we're so brilliant. But they will undoubtedly put their own spin on it and change it. So it could happen quickly, but most likely
It's not gonna happen quickly.
It's not going to happen.
But is it gonna happen within this?
It
year
may,
term,
there are a lot of
or is it
off
gonna be
ramps.
Next year too, like, is this gonna drag on?
Yes.
we hope, certainly, as legislators, we don't want to have this kind of weight on us either. But so we'd love to pass a bill by the end of this session.
Clarifies things.
Seth was asking if you were a betting person, what are the chances that this will happen?
Or something.
It also
Not sure how to put the odds on.
Yeah.
It also depends what legislators have heard when they went home to their
Yeah.
communities this
Yeah.
summer, right? And I think, if other people are hearing what we're hearing, we may be in a very different position when people come back in January.
But we hope for clarity by June.
By June, okay.
We can live in hope.
Jim, that would be the last comment unless someone's really burning to say something.
Jim Half in the town of Killington. I didn't just move here this year. I moved here in 1997, living in Killington. My daughter was 6 weeks old. Act 60 came in. It was voted on that year and started in 1998. We knew back then that we had, we said too many schools with some of them with 50 in high school. We had a declining enrollment of students and we had a high staff or whatever. That's what was said back in 1997. So the question about how long can this take? My daughter now is 28 years old. And here we are today. We have too many schools. We have a declining enrollment of students and we have a higher staff or whatever that's costing billions of dollars. So how long could it take? Who knows? It's in government's hands. I just want to make a couple clarifications here that this is not just one item. The state of Vermont has a lot of bubble glasses that need to break open and become one. Act 250 Act 180, whatever the new act is for that. It started out that if you had sewer, water, floodplains, a board, subdivision regulations, a town that could handle the stuff, anywhere they decided that it would be growth by having the sewer and water there would be. The new map, all of a sudden that came out of this act here, it starts putting in like there's areas that we're not gonna be able to. How are we gonna grow places if I think it's 181. It says you can't have longer than an 800-foot road without it going to Act 250. When is Act 250 going to allow businesses to move in town into the state of Vermont quicker than it is going now, 10 or 12 years?
In all fairness, Jim, that's a different conversation.
No, the conversation.
We're happy to have.
I only have 2 minutes, so can you be quiet?
10 seconds.
There's glasses that need to be broken.
Yeah.
The last thing is the TIF district in Killington. There's no village 4 years later. They have to pay the bill no matter what. We've got water out of it to bring down to an area that we had the resort and the developer buy 70 acres for the town to move forward to put in 250 to 300 affordable housing spots. TIF is a good mechanism, and maybe we should start looking at current use, probably giving breaks to people that take advantage of current use, of just throwing their land in there, not paying their taxes. Is a hell of a lot more money being lost to the schools than any TIF district in the state of Vermont total. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I think we'll, well, one more, but that's it, because I think you have a mechanism, you can talk to anybody online and so forth, and we do have other things on our agenda, including more public comments, so I'll let it go.
Again, a clarifying point about timeline. So let's say there was a decision by next June. And I think the idea is, right, these doors are still gonna be open, our kids are still gonna walk into this school for next school year. But when you say governance might change, like the circle might be bigger, doesn't that also mean budget though? So doesn't that mean that budget decisions could be being made with another school? Let's say Hartford, let's say Windsor. Doesn't that mean in terms of governance that budget could be changing, which could be affecting the kids in our school as early as, let's say, 2027 start of the school year?
One more year out, but I think it's,
a lot further out.
yeah, I mean, you can't, the reality is it's very challenging to merge. I don't think you'll have it that fast, but the idea is longer run, yes, but I think then we just don't know. I mean, there's so much uncertainty right now. I think it's really hard to gauge.
Even say like the start of 2027 school year.
It won't be the start of 2027.
No, nothing that early.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a heartbeat.
That was one of the major debating points about when all of this would actually affect, as to what year. And there was a compromise to actually make it sooner to get the governor's approval on it. But it was also to go to a foundation formula where you wouldn't be voting on your local budget. The state would tell you how much money you have based on the characteristics of your student. So that's being verified again with another study committee. Is that the right numbers? Is it right? So we'll be discussing that again.
It's a longer ways out than even maybe 27, 28.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, we thank three of you for taking your time tonight. We know how hard you work. We know it's a citizens legislature and you should probably be year round, in my opinion. We thank you for the time and the access that we can talk to our legislators and get responses. So I think there may be others who would like to provide public comment, and again, we'll try to keep it to 2 minutes. I'll go a little over than that. Some people did, but let's keep it going if you have things that you want to say. Yes, Heather.
Heather Renata. Unfortunately, the person I wanted to speak to doesn't appear to be here tonight. But I am going to read what I had wrote to said person. Hi, Mr. Townsend. I think you remember me, Heather Renata. I was your Algebra 1 teacher many years ago. I read your comments in the Vermont Standard, and at first I was angry, and now I'm just hurt. For 22 years, I've been pouring my heart and soul into creating a rigorous and comprehensive math program. I'm not alone. Every single teacher in this district is doing the same. Your words hurt me, and every math teacher who is doing their job of teaching mathematics standards that are set by the state. From having you years ago, I'm going to hope that I understand what you said was not actually what you meant. I read between the lines, and what I think you meant was that we are not teaching students important skills. Instead, all we are doing is teaching to the test or preparing students who want to go to college. I believe life skills like balancing a checkbook or cooking are super important, but I want so much more from my math students. I want to create students who are vicious problem solvers. I want students to be able to be comfortable attacking any problem that comes their way. I work so hard to build students' confidence in math, so it isn't something they shy away from, but instead they embrace it. Students should learn in school what they can't at home. Teachers can't teach everything. Please teach your child how to cook, tie their shoelaces, how to say please and thank you, and let me teach your child how to problem solve if a membership is really worth it, or how to read and analyze data. You've seen all the quantitative data that shows the growth of students in mathematics in our schools and in our district. Though this data is important, I find qualitative data to be more meaningful, as it is the story of our students' experiences. I speak often to my former students, and some of their words are, I was so prepared for the ASVAB, which is a military test, because I took math all the way through Algebra 2. I took calculus in college, and I was so thankful that you taught me pre-calculus, as I was more prepared than others. I never used any math past geometry, but now looking back, I'm so glad that I kept taking a math class because it built my confidence. You were the first teacher whose class I failed, and I appreciate it so much because it was my wake-up call, and now I attribute my success to that failure. It certainly takes a village to raise a child, and you and I are part of that village. It is our job as adults to prepare each child in our village for the future. I invite you to come to my classroom so we can talk and problem solve how we can do that. My door is always open and will always be open for anybody who wants to talk to solve problems. So, Mr. Townsend, you were correct when you said our mathematics program is not great. It's amazing.
I'm going to take somebody online. Lauren, please. Lauren.
Hi there. My name's Lauren Sullivan Justice. I'm a Wethersfield resident and a WUHS 9th grade English teacher and the English department co-chair at WUHS. I'm speaking today to correct misinformation shared in the Vermont Standard about literacy in our district and to share a teacher's perspective on the value of the education we provide, especially in 9th grade. In the Vermont Standard, board member Ryan Townsend claimed that our literacy scores are average. 73% of our students were proficient on the 2025 VT-CAP ELA assessment, up from 68% in 2024. Give me 1 second. Oh, sorry. My apologies. That makes us the 4th supervisory union in Vermont for literacy. STAR assessment scores also continue to rise. By 10th grade, 80% of our students meet or exceed proficiency in reading comprehension. These gains reflect our consistent focus on reading, writing, and speaking across all classes. Mr. Townsend also suggested that WUHS students aren't learning essential life skills, saying his children, quote, won't be able to balance a checkbook or measure ingredients to cook a meal. In reality, our approach to outdoor and experiential learning directly builds important life skills. For example, 9th graders recently prepared 16,000 square feet of underused campus land to become a pollinator habitat, a project requiring planning, measuring, collaboration, and perseverance. Life skills are woven throughout our 9th grade curriculum. In a shared unit between wellness and modern world, students study food insecurity and create meal plans using a 3 Squares Vermont budget. They shop for groceries and donate their purchases to the Upper Valley Haven, then cook soup, bake bread, and make butter at Billings Farm for the Thompson Senior Center. These experiences teach budgeting, measuring, and cooking alongside empathy and stewardship. In English class, 9th grade students explore literature that broadens their perspectives and write original stories addressing real-world social justice issues. They present their work publicly, learning to think critically, communicate respectfully, and connect their learning to the wider world. The 9th grade program is intentionally designed to develop essential skills for modern life. Our practices are evidence-based and rooted in the portrait of a graduate. Yes, we go outside. Yes, we play and have fun. But through that, our students learn to understand themselves, others, and their role as active, responsible members of their communities. I welcome your collaboration instead of your criticism. Thank you.
Is there anyone in the room who would like to speak? Nancy.
Nancy Stockwell, Woodstock. First of all, I just want to say I appreciate how hard the board works, how hard the administration works, and teachers and staff in the school, not just teachers, everybody. And I'd like to see more of that somehow shared with the public. Just as we've seen, there was a negative comment made in a recent standard, which I was upset to read personally. And I was really happy the next week when I read the rebuttal that talked about the actual scores. And as a retired teacher, that was very uplifting because I know how hard our teachers are working to be successful in the classroom. And I know it's really a hard job. And I am not suggesting more work for teachers, but what I would like to see, you know, here were 2 papers. And then when I pulled out the Valley News this Saturday, I only get the Saturday one. And there was a huge page from Lebanon. So I found out what was going on in the schools. I'd like to know. I don't get the principal's notes anymore. I don't know what's happening in school. And as a retired teacher and interested taxpayer, I would like to know a little more. Maybe you just have a rotating basis where different principals, oh, this week Barnard's going to put something in, next week Reading's going to, the week after Wes is going to, then Prosper Valley, something short, a little blip, maybe a photo. I think it would help you build encouragement and good PR with your whole district. There's a lot of old retired people like me who read the standard and would rather read about, oh, this is happening. Oh, they went, first grade went to Billings Farm. And I just heard something that high school students did that I didn't know anything about. And I didn't have to search website after website to find it. I just opened my paper and there it was. So I would encourage that the district try to do that. I know you don't have a paid position for that, but figure out a way to do it without a lot of extra work for anyone.
Thank you. Anybody online? Anybody else in the audience here? Janice?
So I also read the article in the Standard and
name and town, please.
Sorry, Janice Bowell. I live in Barnard and I'm a teacher here at Woodstock and I am a co-creator of our craft program, which is an interdisciplinary pathway around climate and community resilience, agriculture, forestry, and technology. We do a lot of outdoor learning, and that learning is not play. That learning is climate solutions that our kids have put their heart, souls, and hands into. And I just want to say that I so appreciate what you're saying, is that we have to get the message out about all of the amazing things that happen inside and outside of this building on a daily basis. And yes, test scores are one measure of that, but they are not the only measure of that. So when we talk about, you know, our district having all of these wonderful things in terms of our scores and where our students end up, we also have to look at like just the day-to-day work that happens in this building and in this community throughout all of the buildings. I mean, we had an amazing collaboration with our pre-K students. We helped plant native plants on their local forest trail. these small little 3-year-olds looking up to our 17-year-olds. Like, these are things that we do need to share. And I appreciate the fact that you're bringing that to light, because we have to celebrate all of the wonderful things that are happening.
Yes.
And I really hope that board members can see that putting negative information in the paper that's not accurate and not true, it just harms us. It does not lift us up as a community. And I hope that in the future, the Vermont Standard can recognize when things are not being vetted, not being truthful, and give light to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else? Jim?
So, 3 daughters that have gone through from kindergarten always through, another, they're doing well. I look at things differently. This person that said something negatively, look at the positive that is coming out tonight. And I really appreciate what you're saying, since my youngest now is 22. We really don't know what's going on in the school. I really do think it should be a step up, because all people are hearing today is how we need to cut, okay? And I think we need to get out of the little window that we're in of just everybody in the school that's going. There's a larger group of people that need to know what's going on and are gonna be voting on your budgets, on your school, new school and everything. And let's go from there. I walked in here a little late. I was shocked to hear, because while I was on the board for 15 years here, I was the one that pushed for every AP class to be paid for in the budget and had to settle for one. So it was a little shocking today to hear that we as a community are not including an AP fee paid by the taxpayers to get our children to. Because one of the big things in this school district is how many AP classes we have. And we should be pushing that and saying, and my saying back then was, I don't care if you have $0 in your bank account or if you have $50 million in your bank account. You come to school here, your AP classes are paid for. We settled on one. It was kind of hurting today to hear that it's not happening. So the school is great. The state has problems.
Thank you, Jim. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to close public comment and we're going to move on into the time scheduled appointments, starting with the introduction of our new student representative.
We have myself and Chair Bristow, Noah Logan. We're so excited to bring him. He's a junior at Woodstock High School. He is a Weathersfield resident, and he is well vetted in education, as both his parents are very involved as public educators. So we're very excited. He represented himself very well with us when we met with him, and welcome you, Logan, to school board. The board so chooses.
Yes, well, we have chosen him, so.
You survived this.
Yes. He was with us and gave an impressive introduction of his interests, his goals, and his purpose for wanting to be on the school board. So thank you so much, Logan and Lila, for your good work and your voices. Thank you. All right, we now have a math and literacy update from Julie Brown and Patty Kelly.
And I'm getting there.
All right, this will be short and sweet, but it is a nice opportunity for Julie and I to come and speak a little bit more about some of the exciting things that are happening in our schools and with our teachers and professional learning across the district. So I'm Patty Kelly, I'm the district math coordinator. And you can go to the next slide. Really, what my focus is right now, something I've been thinking a lot about is the idea that we have had many wins, individual wins in terms of work that we've done across the district and in our data and that sort of thing. But for me, a big part of it is building that coherent, connected system across our schools and across our grade levels for students. And a big part of that is the work that we're doing with our teachers and all of the resource development and everything else that we're working on. So next slide. We've had a lot of different areas where we've had gains in our math scores, and someone mentioned that earlier. And a lot of that is connected to the work that we're doing behind the scenes with our professional learning and our really thoughtful approaches to math, teaching and learning pre-K 12. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit about what those pieces include. You can go to the next slide. So our professional learning, it includes some things that we've been doing for a number of years now with the intention of continuing these things ongoing and becoming a really ingrained part of our system. And we've introduced some new pieces to the puzzle this year as well. So for several years, I think we're on year 4 or 5 now of doing what we call Math Pact PD. So essentially it's the initial professional development for teachers, usually in the second year within the district, because they do some literacy training with Julie in their first year and then come to me in the second year for 4 days of professional development around how we approach math teaching and learning across the district and come together to understand the critical vocabulary, representations, generalizations, what that progression of learning looks like for students pre-K 12, so that teachers not only are understanding a depth of math content at their own grade level, but they're also seeing that big picture of how students grow over time across the district. And this year, another piece that we've introduced is every grade level, K6 has 4 half days together where they come together with their grade level to meet and talk about the resources they're implementing in their classrooms and problems of practice that they have with their instruction, questions they have. We did adopt a new math program last year for K4. And so the initial attention for that is really to make sure that we're addressing teachers' need for understanding the program, integrating it into their instruction, knowing that they have what resources they have access to, and sort of problem solving together. But really that has become, these meetings have now become my favorite part of everything I get to do, because I really just am so thankful to the teachers. They've jumped in to learning this new math program, but also really engaging in a lot of deep conversations about how they're supporting students in their classrooms, how the materials are informing their instruction about what students know and need support with. And it's just been a really great opportunity to connect teachers across the district. And for the middle school, high school, we also received a grant from the Agency of Education. So Teachers Development Group is going to be working with our math teachers, our middle school and high school math teachers, where we have a seminar coming up for the next in-service day around ambitious math teaching. And then we have 3 cycles, they call them studio cycles. So they're essentially coaching cycles with the teacher development group. Again, to bring our department together and have lots of conversations about teaching and learning math across those grade levels. And we still have our math equity work group. We're working asynchronously this year to refine our vision mission documents and sort of regroup and determine next steps. There's been a lot of work done in the last several years that we're now just wanting to come around and think about the next phase of the action steps for that work. So next slide. So the core resource that we adopted, K4, is actually aligned with the program materials that grades 5 through 8 are using as well. So it's a really nice coherent system that we have going on in terms of a high quality instructional materials for teachers to be using in the classrooms, and also give that coherence for our students. Already we're able to see the connection between that math packed work that we did around really core representations and vocabulary at the grade level. And we're seeing the benefits of that as it's aligned to these materials that we're using. But as we're implementing this year, really we have people who have sort of interacted with the materials at different levels, because we had some teachers piloting the program last year, part of that selection process. And for some teachers, it's new this year. So we're making sure that we're supporting teachers at all the different levels of the materials, understanding the materials and building their expertise with that this year. And our ask is that we're all following the same scope and sequence of the units, following the general lesson design. There's still levels of autonomy in terms of making decisions within the lesson to make sure that they're supporting students as they need it during the lesson implementation. But because we have this common foundational program, when we're coming together for those grade level meetings, we're just having really good conversations about student learning and what's going on in our classrooms. So, and also collecting a new level of data within the program's unit assessments, which is something that is sort of another piece of information that we're gathering and able to talk about to support students in the classroom. Go to the next slide.
It's a little tired. Hang on.
Oh, so much.
Hey.
There we go. And then there's a number of other things going on across the district. Again, things that I've been doing for a few years now, but they're really critical parts of our system that I hope to continue ongoing. I have days booked into each building to make sure that I spend entire days in the building and I'm made available as teachers want to meet or check in. I meet with administrators, co-teach lessons, answer questions, look at data with them, whatever it is that needs to happen. Beyond that, if teachers reach out or, you know, I'll work on coaching cycles with teachers as they requested as well. But this just gives me a committed time that they know I'm coming into the buildings. I'm also heading into buildings for in-service days, data meetings, faculty meetings, whatever might be needed in that to support those conversations in the schools. As well, I did want to mention there's a QR code, a link on our report card, elementary report card, that provides some support for families around the domains of math and some suggestions for how they can support their student at their grade level in those different areas. So the program that we adopted at the elementary grades also has really nice family letters that go along with each unit. So parents might be seeing those come home as well. But it's just some ways we're trying to make sure that we're giving more information about how students are learning math. Is that, I'm wondering, that might be the last one. Oh, no. So this year, really, like, the core focus is around making sure that we're implementing our math program in the classrooms, making sure we're attending to questions teachers have about that, making sure everybody has access to materials and it can support their instruction, and facilitating those teacher groups, having teachers coming together and be able to connect and ask questions and work together in that way. But really thinking 3 years out, I'm always thinking ahead to like the next layers of this. My hope really as part of this ongoing system is to bring in more opportunities for teachers to come together to look at student work and to look at our data, calibrate our scoring of assessments, things that we're just sort of learning. We're just learning about those unit assessments now, but later on, it would be really good if we could come together as grade level teams to look at that. And also figure out within our programming what additional resources we might need, and making sure that we're building a bank of those resources to support teachers. One thing that's come out of some of the work already is that we had a data platform that we use for the universal screening. It's called the USNS. It's the Universal Screener for Number Sense that students do 3 times a year. We have a data platform that collects that data and gives us reports and lets us see things district-wide. That same platform actually can house the unit assessments from this program that we just adopted. And I sort of threw it out to teachers and said, oh, like this is available. It can help you with report cards. It help you see some alignment with those other screeners that you do and look at the data, you know, over the course of the year and give you more information. Not wanting to put another thing on their plate, just letting them know that it was available. And teachers really jumped on board and just started putting their data in, wanted to talk about it and really are using it already, which I think to me was a big win, and that I think it says a lot about the teachers' willingness to jump in and make this work. So I do want to say a really huge thank you to the teachers in this district that I've had an opportunity to work with, because all of these things that we've asked teachers to come to the table for and engage in and have really great conversations about, they've just been on board, and they've been working really hard to make this work. And one of my favorite things about our grade level meetings is that teachers right away were saying how engaged students were with the materials. And I think a lot of the reason for that is because teachers were involved in piloting these programs and selecting programs that really align with who we are and how we approach teaching and learning. So it makes me really happy to see that the teachers find the materials useful and accessible and able to be implemented, and the students are also really engaged with it and enjoying that work. So if anyone has any questions or wants more details about any of these pieces, please don't hesitate to email me, reach out. I always want to talk. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say what's really exciting about what Patty has done, and you know, Nancy can speak to this. Programs were given to teachers, and then you're left to your room to figure it out. For years, I mean, for years and years. And so having a facilitator in math and literacy brings these teachers together. You're sitting with other kindergarten teachers, sitting with other third grade teachers. You're talking about what your challenges you're talking about. You're not alone in your classroom trying to figure it out. And that is why you see such engagement with our teachers, talking about data, willingness to try things, because we're bringing Patty and Julia, bringing teachers together to have those conversations. Principals are finding coverage. It's hard to find some, but we're still making it work so teachers have those opportunities. And then we see a difference in terms of student outcomes. So it's really exciting for math people like me. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you. Okay. Thanks, Patty. Patty and I have been looking forward to sharing our work with you for over a month now, so it's nice to be together. So I'm Julie Brown. I'm the district literacy facilitator, and I wanted to just start by saying how proud I am to work in a school district whose teachers would draft such an audacious document such as this, that success in reading is an issue of equity, and we're aiming for 90% of our students to be proficient in reading. Next slide, please. So I'm glad I have, in light of the conversation this evening, I'm really glad I have these slides up here, and we really can't talk about literacy at MVSU without a little bit of context, and I think you as board members deserve to know this. This is the 4th grade national data for Vermont and the nation, and the 8th grade on the National Assessment of Educational Progress. These are all hyperlinked for you if you want to see more. In black is the United States average score for literacy for 4th graders, and you can see that since 2015, Vermont's been on a downward path for literacy at 4th grade and at 8th grade.
We are now at or below the national average as a state. There is no state level data for the 12th grade, but the most recent round of testing in 2024 saw that 35% of our high school seniors read proficiently grade level text, and 32%, so just about 1 in 3, right? Yeah, are at the below basic level, which means they can't read a complex text, a grade level text, and tell you what it was about. We are really in a literacy crisis. And while legislatures were talking about the scarcity, I really appreciated someone in the audience talking about, let's look at some positives. I think this district, its focus on literacy and math, not as the only skills that are important, but as a baseline for equity. I think it's important also, we know some statistics. This is from the National Literacy Institute.com website that I just Googled while I was listening. 3 out of 4 people receiving welfare have below proficient levels of literacy. 3 out of 5 incarcerated people are either low or illiterate. The most common denominator for adjudicated youth is low literacy. That it's not race, it's not socioeconomic status. 85% of juvenile offenders. We've known this for so long. In 1993, the U.S. Department of Justice wrote a report saying delinquency is welded to reading failure. 130 million adults in the United States can't read a simple story to their children, and illiteracy and low literacy costs the United States $2.2 trillion annually in lost income. So that's really important. I wasn't planning on saying that, but hearing the economic discussion, literacy is central to the health of our families and our communities. So we can move on to the next slide and look at how we're doing at Mountain Views. So since we've focused a little bit more on instruction, I appreciated how Rebecca Holcomb was saying we're getting so wrapped up and sucked into policy decisions, we've taken the eye off of instruction, but I'm so proud to be part of this district with a board that supports this work to focus on instruction. Sherry, if you advance the slide one more, you'll see this is Mountain View's 3rd grade state testing results. We went from 57% proficient in 2023, we're at 79% proficient now, and 70% of these 3rd graders performed with distinction. And this dotted line is the state average, hovered at 48% for 3rd graders. So that's really good news, and I wanted to share that with you all. And what's remarkable about Mountain Views and the support that we get from the board and from Sherry is that we're not leaving our older students out of the discussion. And this is the final year of district testing that we give. We don't give this assessment for 11th and 12th graders. This is our district assessment. And you can see that when we started in 2022, 2023, 43% of our students were testing at meeting intervention level. And we're now down to 8% are there. So we have 92% of our beginning of year 10th grade students are demonstrating above intervention level literacy skills. And I think Lauren Sullivan Justice mentioned some 9th grade data. So we're seeing results, and our teachers are working so hard, our administrators are working so hard, and I want to thank the board for working so hard and supporting literacy over time consistently. Our achievement is strong and it's rising, and within a context of a state that's declining, that's remarkable. I think our teachers really deserve all the credit, and the board and you for all your support. I think I have another slide. Yeah. And so I'll just close with what we're doing this year. We're having ongoing support and training for teachers in evidence-based practices or structured literacy. We're having ongoing training for secondary literacy, where teachers are filming themselves, delivering lessons, and sharing it with their colleagues in sort of a structured model of professional development. That's been really fun and fabulous to see science teachers talking about literacy in their classrooms and sharing it and discussing how we can bring that across the classroom. We're looking at a spelling, at our spelling curriculum in grades 4 through 6 and whether we need to make some changes there or not with groups of teachers. And we're really focusing now on refining our practices. So we're really focusing on how can we improve our classroom instruction through some explicit instruction moves. And so I'm supporting that work around the district. And one more slide, Sherry. So I won't play this video, but this is Kareem Weaver, and he's the director of the Right to Read film, which Sherry screened at the beginning of the school year 3 years ago now. And he is an activist and a former teacher and principal, and he is trying to get the country to pay attention to the literacy crisis. And he just talks so eloquently about what it takes to improve outcomes. And I was recently at a conference and he was giving a talk and he outlined the evidence and what's possible. We can do this. And this is what you need to do. So to sum up, find yourself a board and a superintendent that understands that literacy is equity. Step 2, make sure your teachers have all the resources they need and training and knowledge they need to make a difference for their students. Make sure we can follow the evidence. And 3, set a specific goal for student achievement and work towards it like your students' lives depend on it, because they do. And I was in the audience and it's all I could do not to just jump up and down and say, we're doing that. Come see us in Little Mountain View Supervisory Union and meet our board and meet our superintendent and our amazing teachers. And we're doing that hard work. And I know that together, I think we can reach our goals. I know we can reach our goals. And I think we can become a lighthouse district for the state to show them, hey, in a rural district without lots of coaches, without a lot of resources that big urban districts have, this work is possible. This work is transformative for schools and for students and families, and it's we can do it. I know we can. And again, thank you so much.
I just want to say we were both given 5 minutes each, and there's no way either of one of us can stand to only talk about either of our subjects for 5 minutes. I could easily do another hour and a half, but we're gonna leave everybody alone.
Yeah, okay, all right. So thank you for supporting literacy and math.
For taking the time to come tonight. I know it's very hard for teachers to change. I'm one of those that this is the way I like to do it, but it wasn't always the best way. And I'm so glad that, you had to work hard to win over people who didn't want to change. And it just shows that it does happen, it can happen. The one question I have is, have you thought about doing any evening workshops for parents to come, particularly in the math? Because I hear from parents all the time, I can't help my child with math. It's a whole new way of doing it, and I don't want to mess them up.
We have been talking about that actually, about trying to figure out the right ways to do it to make it accessible, because it's just really hard. And doing things remotely is more available for people, but also very impersonal and a little more challenging to really engage and have those conversations. But then doing things in person can be challenging too, because childcare and scheduling and distances and all that. So I even said, I think I just need to come to a football game and set up a math table and see what happens. I don't know, So if people have ideas, please let us know. But I do think that's on our list of things that we've been talking about, is trying to find more ways to engage with the community. Pardon me?
Potluck.
Feed
them and they'll come.
Yeah, true. I thought you said pop up at one point. I'm like, oh, like when those little stores, put up the tent.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that was the message you all got. You're doing incredible work for our students, and you're managing a lot of things, and you're focused on instructional quality and outcomes for kids.
All right. The next item is around transportation grants for field trips. This summer, the Vermont Standard contacted me directly because I know a couple of reporters there. And they said, we have a charitable arm of our newspaper. And we have successfully started the program in Connecticut with another newspaper that they own. And they offer money to teachers to pay for transportation for field trips so that the transportation piece is not a problem. So I met with Jim and Sherry about that, and as of today, the school has a mechanism now, the schools have a mechanism now for putting out a link, which will go out tomorrow, most likely, that allows teachers to look at the application. They have some not too many parameters on how you get it. It's more a matter of signing up for it, and it will allow, they will offer it. We want to make sure that all the schools have access to it, but the standard will do the work of deciding which field trips they'll fund, and then the teacher just sends them the bill and they pay it. Very simple procedure, and they have named a bunch of places around the state that they suggest would be good places to go to have hands-on experiences, from Echo Center up north to Billings Farms here and things like that. So I think it's really exciting that our local newspaper that supports us quite a bit prints pretty much whatever we ask them to, send an article over about theater or things like that. They print it, and that they've offered us this opportunity. So I want to thank the Vermont Standard very much for what they have done and offered to our district and 3 other districts locally. So I wanted you to know about that. All right, the announced tuition rate.
So we have Jennifer Conrad in tonight. She is the acting assistant director of finance. For some of you may know that Jim had surgery last Friday. It went well. He texted us this morning. He is so bored, and he is still, and his wife is holding it tight reins. So we're trying to allow that, but he's only 3 days out and he's already driving everybody crazy. We have Jen here tonight who will present on the announced tuition.
Okay, so the Finance Committee reviewed the elementary and middle school, high school tuition rates and increased these tuition rates based on the National Consumer Price Index increases for the prior budget year. The national CPIU for the last fiscal year was increased by 2.895%. So the recommended tuition rates for fiscal year 27 are as follows. The middle school, high school rate is $23,160. That's up from $22,510. The elementary rate will be $20,250, and that is up from $19,680. And then pre-K will be $12,470, and that's up from $12,120.
So we need a motion and then discussion.
Yes, is there a motion to accept the fiscal year 27 tuition rates as proposed?
This is Anna, so moved.
Okay, Corinne and Anna, they can, or they can just.
I'll take second.
Okay. All right, is there questions, discussion from the board? Let's see anything online. Yes, Bob?
I got one. In our analysis that I've seen in the past where we poll people who have left the district, have we ever asked them the question or found out whether anyone's left the district who's tuitioned in, that they left because it was too expensive?
Well, it's the towns that are paying the tuition. It's not individual families. So it's school choice. That's the tuition. There is no we do not have parentally placed students in the district. That's a policy. So this only applies to towns where students can choose, are one of our board members. And so this is the tuition rate that the town
pays for.
It's not,
okay.
We don't do parentally placed students.
Anybody else? All right, I think we're ready to vote. All in favor of the recommended numbers that we have in front of us, please say aye or
Aye.
wave your Zoom hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Good. Discussion of the district quality standards. I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say that since it's been a very long meeting so far, and it would be a fairly laborious effort for me to tally all of the answers you have, I'm gonna ask you, as 5 people have already done, to please go through the items by yourself and send me them within the next 2 days. Otherwise, we can entertain a very long, well, not very long, long enough time to collect all that information. And I'll just clarify that this is the first time the state has done it. It's really a beta test to see if they're the right questions. So there's no wrong answers or right answers. And if you really don't know, it's fine to say, I really don't know, on any of the items. But what the people did, all 5 of you who sent it to me already, they just listed the number on the document and they gave their rating. And so I'm not gonna make further comment on that, except I will send it back to you once I have enough that are credible. And, you know, I'm not gonna send out just 5 out of 18 or 19 board members, so please.
And I need that data by the end of the week.
Yep, I'd like it by Wednesday.
Oh, great. Oh,
You want to average them?
Yeah, I'm gonna average them, yep. I'm just gonna average them and have a composite score, and I'll be happy to share that with you. All right, thank you.
Quick question.
Yes.
On the one where the board holds an annual retreat, that includes continuous learning, can that qualify as a field trip
We could,
and get free transportation?
perhaps.
Okay.
I'll check that out with the standard. Yeah. Okay. Senate Education Visit Overview.
So in front of you, you have the agenda. So about a month ago, Senator Bongartz approached Dr. Singolani about a visit. After that, I joined Aaron in a conversation with with Senator Bongartz. It's late. You will see in front of you our schedule. Our intention is really to share the kinds of experiences students have. Students have been very involved in terms of the fishbowl, which is an opportunity for students to share their opinions in a very constructive way. We'll also have an opportunity for faculty questions. So Equity Sticks is a way that we engage all of our students in meetings. Elliot was a witness to a fishbowl that was really, and when we were in Tucson, and it's something we use here, students will be taking the senators to middle school lunch, which is an experience that every human being should have once. And so then they will join students in class for 30 minutes. Joe and I will be giving a building tour. We will have lovely photos of some of the things that are subterranean. You can't see unless you have special cameras. So we'll stop at all the beautiful spots along our building and show photos of what it really looks like underneath the floors. They'll come back. There'll be a short break where they can speak with press. From 2:30 to 3, our students will lead the conversation. So students will have an opportunity to speak directly to the Senate Education Committee. And then from 3 o'clock on, and I expect it will be much longer than 4, that's our opportunity to have conversations. Senate Education Committee is where education decisions are made. House Ed are lovely people. I've been there many times. It goes nowhere if it can't get through Senate Ed. This is an important opportunity. We are one of 4 districts in the state that are having this opportunity. So we should really bring people in as much as we can. I understand and appreciate 3 o'clock is not easy. I anticipate that we will be here much later than 4, hopefully, and that we will give everyone an opportunity to speak.
And they will be recording it and uploading it to YouTube. So once we have that link, we can send it out to the public for those who can't make it there. And for the board to know that the 11 to 11:10 is a time when we as board members can be present and have short conversations, of course, but at least if you have something you want to say directly to them, you can do that. If you're able to come away from your job Ellie and I have the rough jobs here, I think. And John Williams and I have said we will provide food for that event. So if you have any thoughts on people who bake better than I do, we'd be happy for your help. But anyway, John and I have to work on that project. If anyone has an in with the Bell farmer there, that might be something different. So yeah, great job, Sherry and the team for putting together a pretty comprehensive opportunity for them to see elementary to high school education. Any questions for Sherry?
Hey, this is Anna. Yeah, I'm looking at the board book now, or at least the electronic version on our website, and it doesn't have the agenda printed out. It just says that, during our meeting, we're going to review the agenda. Is the agenda somewhere that we can access and that public community members can access as well?
I can ask Jenna to link it to the agenda.
That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
And Sarit worked with some community members to develop an e-bite for the community forum, starting at 2:45 to 4 o'clock. So it's a nice way to help, and we drafted up an email to invite community members to come and have their voice heard. So trying to fill that room. And we'll pass that around to all the board members. Please share with your communities.
Corinne?
Do you have any insight as to what, what motivated them to reach out to us or to any schools to do this visit? Or is it something that, I mean, this is obviously a unique time, but do you have a sense of what they're hoping to learn?
So the question that Senator Bondartz proposes, what they're interested in learning is how we meet the needs of all students. So we will have elementary students and teachers presenting, and and the issue slide deck. And they're also interested in seeing the facility. And so we will more than accommodate them in that visit. Right, Joe? Is he still awake? Joe, go home. Will you go home? Oh my God.
I'm just gonna hang out here until.
You might as well just somebody. So that's what the stated, and I think they want to be seen in the public school. They want something to post.
And
So we're gonna take full advantage of their visit.
And Gina has done a full release that will be going out to the various places, including, might have already gotten this, or. And it's interesting, she asked me to get a quote from him, so I wrote him a note and I said, can I get a quote from you around your visit? And he wrote me this thing and he said, yeah, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. So I decided, well, I'll go for it. So I typed up my thoughts about my concerns, that some of which I expressed tonight, and many other concerns that I expressed in my very lengthy email to him. And he wrote me back and he said, call me. So I picked up the phone and I called him and we talked for half an hour, and I said, I didn't repeat everything I said, but he said, the best thing you can do is keep saying it and saying it and saying it. So I said, all right, we'll do it.
Yeah, and I think, I'm gonna ask for the question, what we have to pay attention. We cannot be complacent in what the work is happening in Montpelier. And when I see 86 people show up tonight, that's what we need. We need people to be curious and ask questions and engage their legislators, because when that happens, look what happened. We had real representation, we had real answers, that people cannot take for granted that the issue will continue as we know it. So that will only happen if people stay involved.
Okay,
now for the most exciting part.
The most exciting part, the initial discussion of the fiscal 27 budget.
All right, so many of you will recognize the slide deck. It was resurrected from a previous finance chair. I am going to walk you through tonight. Matt's traveling and Jim is trying to be good in the hospital. We'll see if that lasts. So this is our first introductory session around the budget for FY27. What we will be talking about in the presentation are the Vermont education funding walkthrough, just to remind everybody, how do we get to our numbers? What are the pieces that play in terms of determining the per pupil spend. What are this year's district budget drivers? What are the things that are influencing our decisions? How does that yield billing work? And when are the timelines we get that information? What are the current budget priorities? So in conversations with principals and directors, what are we looking for? And then the equalized tax rate projection. It's not available till December, but just so we can begin to think about some of the things that help us determine our per pupil spend, we don't even know about until after December 1st. So, ed funding walkthrough, we're gonna do this quickly, slow me down if you want. So just as a representation, and we talked a little bit about this before, here are the different buckets that go into the education fund. It was very important when Rebecca said, the large portion of the ed fund that goes to things that are not education. It's a true thing. So we have homestead property tax, we have non-homestead, we have our sales and use taxes, state lottery. These are all the pieces that put together that $2 billion annual total education fund. How do we get there? So we take total expenditures of the budget. So everything we know we need to offer our current program. And then we take away any local revenues, and those are monies that we generate locally. It is, and it can be things such as grants that we receive, federal grants, those pieces. That gives us education spending. What do we need overall? What are the kinds of grants that we receive? That gives us the education spending. We take the education spending. Then we look at the long-term weighted average daily membership, LTW ADM. That is not the number of students that are sitting in our buildings. That is looking at what are the different weights that a student receives. Pre-K is an example. It's not even half of a student weight. We have a large pre-K population that take a full licensed teacher and a support paraeducator we receive as if that student is only weighted as half. Students who receive special education services, students who are multi-language learners, those students receive a higher rate. So we won't know that number until December, and it changes on a daily basis sometimes. So it's really tricky. So we take our total spending divided by our LTW ADM. That gives us our per pupil spend. What does it cost to educate an individual student based on those ratings?
Who determines the long-term weighting?
There's an algorithm that is so complex that even Jim, our brilliant mathematician, and Raf try to assimilate, and it's really challenging. Like, it's not fun. So it's, yeah. We have guesstimated it. Raf is really good at kind of massaging and looking at it, but it's not worth a guess because things change day to day. Once we determine our per pupil spend, then we see whether that's where that lands as compared to the state established spending threshold. Remember that came back in June of 24, post-COVID, we now have a spending threshold again. So we take our per pupil spend, we adjustify by qualified debt service. So those are the other expenses we have. We adjust and we divide it by the adjusted property yield. Again, we don't get that number till December 1st. And again, it's an estimate. The actual yield may be set in March, it may be set in June, we don't know. It's after we have to create our budget. And that gives us our equalized tax rate. The same tax rate that is then impacted for each town. Take your equalized tax rate, you divide it by your common level of appraisal, CLA, gives you your town tax rate. You good? We've done that before. All right, so that's how we determine what the impact on individual town rates each year. So what are our budget drivers this year? Know that the 2025 audit results, any surplus that we expect to receive from that audit will be applied against the shortfall resulting from fewer tuition students. Jim highlighted it last time we met, we have about a $300,000 shortfall because we have fewer students who are paying in tuition. So we need to recoup that money. Jim anticipates that our LTW ADM will be lower than last year. We have more pre-K students. Our high school is still starting to build up, but it's slower. So when you have more pre-K, we get a lower LTW. Property yield, again, we won't know until after December 1st. Good news, health insurance, we had originally budgeted for around 12%, coming in at 7.4%. This saved us, Jen, about
$300,000.
$300,000.
100,000 in the SU and 200,000 in the SU.
So that was nice. That really helped. Our CBA, again, we have a contract negotiated with the board for both the faculty and staff. Those have annual increases. And then our yield bill reintroduced the penalty phase. So we still have to remember that piece. Yield bill. So this is what happened in June of 24, FY25 yield summary. It talks about not only a spending threshold, but this is when they combine the per pupil spend includes capital expenses. This is when the trouble began. And so you can see a single new exemption was created for any voter approved bonds that were approved prior to July 1. And remember, Jim did his magic last year and moved some bond money around and saved us about $1 million. There's none of that magic happening this year, but that's since that any bond after July 1st, any capital expenses will be part of the per pupil spend. It's why we've been lobbying so hard with Allison and Charlie around decoupling. So budget priorities, we want to limit spending above excess spend threshold. Right now, with the budget that's being proposed, we are $2 to $3 million over the threshold currently. So our health insurance increase of 7.4% added $358,000. Our grid increases around $700,000. You can see where the teacher increases and support staff increases are. The tariffs are impacting us just as they're impacting everybody else. Raf can speak to our technology, any items we were that we annually budget, again, about a 16% increase on any of those pieces of equipment because of the tariffs. And then again, the loss of revenue due to reduction in tuition students was a hit of about $360,000. So our priorities are to maintain the current programs and positions, sustainable increases or sustainable reductions. So whatever we aren't making any increases other than what's in the CBA, and any reductions, making sure those are reductions we continue to live without. It can't be just 1 year run, not by paper, and the next year we have to buy 2 years paper. It has to be something thoughtful. We have to meet the board approved funding priorities. We have to meet Vermont quality standards, and we have the Act 73. And remember, in Act 73, minimum class sizes were introduced. So those are the budget priorities. We have frozen any hiring. There are no new positions in this proposed budget, even then it's $2 to $3 million over the threshold. So equalized tax rates, Jim updated this table. It's late. If you want to look at it, you have access to the presentation, but this is what it looked like over the last 5-6 years and 5 years, and then projecting into FY27. We can't know what where NA is where we're still waiting for data, but you can see how increases have happened over time. So the question is, well, how do we make these decisions around our budget for the board? Remember, you have a board-approved teaching and learning policy. It's linked here. You have a board-approved strategic plan. You have a board-approved portrait of a graduate. And then last spring, you approved continuous improvement plans for each of the individual campuses, as well as our educational quality standards and the Act 73 class size minimums. And I would, knowing that the board has approved all of these documents, that those would be your funding priorities. These are the pieces that you have felt, this is the work you have indicated you want the district to do. I would hope that in your consideration around the budget, that you will consider these primary documents.
And since they're linked in the document, I would probably behoove all of us to review those things before the next meeting.
Yes. And then here's our next step. So December 1st, we will, right around December 1st, it doesn't always get sent us on December 1st. We'll receive that letter. That's when the Finance Committee presents the 2026-2027 budget for review. So this is your first overview of what the budget will look like. Jim or I will present, or Jen will present the full budget at the December 1st meeting. December 15th, we usually don't have committees. We usually is when we start to really, after those 2 weeks, think about what we want to, or what the board wants to put forward in terms of a vote for a total number for the budget. You may also ask for reductions or adjustments that would happen at the December 15th meeting. January 5th is when, at that board meeting, we need to vote on a budget amount if it was not passed in December. Always the nicest gift you can give a superintendent for the holidays is a past budget, but I'm not gonna ask. I have not received it yet, it's okay. But on January 5th, the board must vote on the revised budget so that we can get those numbers out to the individual towns and clerks. Raina Bishop is here tonight. She will tell you how important that is for Janet. I've been around here when we haven't had that on time. And then March 3rd is the actual vote. Questions? Round one.
Two, just sort of detail, small questions. One is, can you help me remember about the pre-K weighting? Weren't they gonna change that?
Yes, they
I
were.
thought
That
it
wasn't
changed,
passed.
but it didn't happen. Okay, okay.
It was right up into the last minute
Yeah.
last spring, where we at least get a full FT, you know, for our 4-year-olds. Didn't happen.
Okay.
Which is really disappointing.
And secondly, I wonder if, I mean, I don't want to ask too much of the board, but I wonder if we might contemplate that special meeting in December, the mid-December meeting being pushed up a week. Just an idea. I mean, I don't know how, when that gets set.
December 8th or
Set
December
8th.
I'd have to assume it's gonna have to be if the yield bill and all of those things come in, because we're not gonna have any of that, we may not have any of that information prior to doing it by the 8th.
So we'll have December 1st, and then whenever we get the yield letter, I mean, that's
It's
the
after,
goal.
it's.
And then we need to have time. Jim will be coming back that week, and so making adjustments based on whatever.
Yeah, I'm gonna make as many adjustments as I can based on whatever comes in set of December 1, but it really depends on the yield bill.
That's up to the board.
Yeah.
How does this compare again to last year's increase, including the penalty phase? What's the?
So we increased 1.5-ish last year over the threshold. We were lucky because Jim found us $1 million. So really, it's a similar ask as last year.
Oh, we don't have another million to.
We have no million, and then we have that 300,000 lost that we, in terms of revenue generated from, so if we had had the same number of out of district students, we would have been at the same exact point as we had last year. We still have, again, insurance goes up 7.54%. We have grid increases. We have not increased any positions.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, finance people, finance committee, thank you for your work.
I think a motion for 5 minute, 3 minute, 2 minute fire break for those who are in the room.
Sure, make a motion, you made a motion.
I made a
Is it
motion.
seconded? Is there a
I'll second. This is
Awesome.
Anna. I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
For you, Jen.
And any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, 5 minutes. Everyone's back?
Let's go.
Oh, and
No, we don't. Right. All right, we are ready for committee short updates, please. Finance committee.
We just did.
Oh, all right, that's fine. Oh, well, Matt's here. Let me know if Matt had anything more he wanted to say.
No, finance committee's does not have any other updates than what Sherry just gave in the presentation.
Thank you. Policy committee.
Okay, so we have a couple of policies. So we didn't have a meeting in October, so this is just an advancement from previous policies. We do have the second reading, the student activities club and athletic policy. And as a reminder, this is, shifted the details into the procedure out of the policy. So I would like that is up for adoption in December. If we could get a motion on that.
So
Okay, John moved it. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Corinne. Any comments, conversation on the student activities clubs and athletic policy? All right, let's vote then. All in favor, please say aye or wave.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Jane.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Heather abstained. So it's passed and it will move to a final reading in the next meeting.
And the next three, again, I'd like to handle together. They have been discussed several times. Some of them, the first one is just basically a title change. The other one is a proactive approach to behavioral threats and management of such. And the third one is basically an update to keep up with the legal requirements. So I would like all three introduced, and these are all for adoption. We brought them up a number of times.
Okay, and that's the selection of library materials. Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move that.
second.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor of adopting these three policies, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, thank you. Thank you, Elliot. Buildings and Grounds Committee update. Is there an update for that? Katie is not on the call, so anyone from Buildings and Ground want to make a comment about anything?
We met. We definitely met. It was a few weeks ago. And we talked about saying.
Probably bonds.
Probably. Yeah, and we thought that Joe was doing a great job.
Great. All right, negotiations, hiring and retention committee update.
One, so the negotiations committee received an MOU to consider from the Education Association regarding, let me just read this. It has to do with coaching salaries. And it's come to their attention that para-educators who coach have been penalized financially for taking on this responsibility, additional responsibility. The reason is because they must sign out and are then unpaid during meets or games. That's where the rub is. Sherry, Tom Emery, Orion, Jim, and this is from Stephen Sense, all agreed that they do need paraeducators as coaches and believe that they should not be penalized financially for this. They're asking that we enact this for both this fiscal year and next fiscal year, and that it would be retroactive to the fiscal year. I don't think we're talking about a lot of money at all, but it's important, one, to compensate people for their time. I guess that's the main reason. So I'd like to make a motion that we accept the MOU for this.
there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Corinne. Any discussion?
Just a quick question. Just the logistics of it. So is the understanding that, I guess the mechanism of that is just, is that gonna be that they won't sign out, or how is that gonna change?
Right, well, they wouldn't have to sign out through the broker. And so they would just, sign out at the typical time, whereas teachers, if you're a coach and you're dismissed at 2, you just go, and it's not impacting. Because of the way the CBA is written, they have to sign out, and so they're not compensated, and the coach's salary is not.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Are we ready to vote?
I have a
All in
quick question.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, is this, are there any other cohorts of staff that this might be affecting, or ways that this may landslide into other ways that the staff may ask for these exceptions to signing out?
Yeah, Jim and I talked it through, and he really didn't think, right now, there are 2 support staff who are coaches, so it's a very small part of this population, and it really is specific to athletic coaches.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor of supporting and approving the MOU, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Heather is opposed? Okay. And-
No, she's not.
I was just late.
Okay,
Yeah.
she's late. All right.
Approved.
Okay, she approved. Any abstentions? All right, then it passes, and John, you'll convey that to Stephen and the gang.
Shall.
Great. We are going to, any working groups? Seth, you may have something for us.
Or 3 quick things. One, we're getting public feedback on the concept to lower cost of a rebuild by only paying 75% of the cost, and relying on the state or private funds for 25%. So we've been pushing that out on listservs and emails, thanks to Gina, Lydia, Sarit, and the communications committee. The rebuild committee, sorry, what are we calling ourselves? The rebuild.
Oh, we have to vote on that.
This is a side, okay. I have a motion to please change our name. Okay? We would like to be called the rebuild group.
Working group.
No, just the rebuild group.
Well, we are a working group.
It's a working group.
So I think you have to have working in. there.
Rebuild working group.
Okay, are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion, please.
Is there a second? Any discussion?
I would like to have rebuild group to the end of the already existing name.
All right, I think then we're ready to vote. All in favor of changing the name, please say aye.
Aye.
Sure.
Any opposed? Any opposed?
Thank you. Okay.
I think of the abstentions. Any abstentions? No. It's approved.
The rebuild working group attendees are members or attending community members, select board members, parents groups, alumni associations, senior groups, and there's a meeting with the teachers later this month to brief them on this concept, ask for their input, figure out what their questions are. We're also going to be starting an effort to do voter ID. So this will be phone banking, calling people to identify in their district. Do you know about this plan? Is this something you can support? Is this something you're undecided for? Is this something you're against? So that we can start to better target our efforts in January to March. And we're organizing to help do that. We're organizing groups in every town. So rebuild advocates in every town. We had a big meeting in Woodstock this last week with 20+ people who want to help do this phone banking and get information out and educate the public. We're having one in Barnard tomorrow night. Corinne, I think you're going with Zach.
Absolutely.
And Heather, I know you're not able to attend, but you have a number of former board members and other community members coming. So you guys should have a strong group. We have a meeting with Pomfret next week on the 11th, I think, at the town hall. And I don't know if you guys are, Bob, I think you're coming. Lydia?
Yeah.
Great. And so we're going to continue to do this. I want to get one started in Killington. Would love to, but I would love to get the board members more involved in this so that you're more familiar with this conversation and can be helpful in identifying leaders and engaging them. Two, we're building a crowd, helping to build a crowd for the 18th. I talked about that earlier. Three, good news is thanks to the Woodstock Trust and efforts by Cliff Johnson, Jason Jabitko, and Tasha Bush, we were able to secure funding to fund architectural services and costing services to update a plan, to do some modifications to the previous build plan and get some updated costs. And Sherry just executed the contract with them. So thanks to the private fundraising for the Woodstock Trust, that was super helpful. There's also another fundraising meeting happening with folks who are interested in fundraising. It's focused on two things. One, offsetting the cost of voters of the rebuild. And then two, paying for expenses associated with Get Out the Vote. I think that's it.
I think there's a question from Anna.
Hey, thanks so much for your work. It's been really nice as one of the veterans from the previous rebuild group to see this taking flight again. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. I believe currently outside of Gina, we do not have a Reading community member on the rebuild work group. Is that something that folks can still reach out to you and sign up for?
Please, we would love a community member from Reading. We would love a community, if we have openings for community members from, I mean, quite frankly, we want to build the biggest tent possible. So whether they're a member or they're an advocate, we want to get them engaged. But yes.
And that was my second, go ahead, Carrie.
I have a name that been sent to me by Lisa Kaya. So it is a person who was actually on the call tonight, but I don't think she's on the call now. But in any case, both Seth and I have communicated with her today and we're waiting to hear back.
Brilliant. I appreciate you.
Love to have a couple more from Reading, from any, really all the towns.
Yeah, there's a good bit of chatter down here about the fact that we don't have an advocacy meeting just set up yet, and eagerness for that. So I'm hopeful that we can get you not only a member for the working group, but maybe some advocates to help collaborate down here as well.
Well, you tell us when you want to do it, and we'll come to you. Help us build the crowd.
Okay, I'll see what I can do. Thanks, Seth.
Thank you.
All set, Seth?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
How much was the money raised, private capital for the architectural upgrade?
A little over 30,000.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just generally, I kind of see three phases of this whole effort. One is education and community engagement, call for input, which is really October through December. January, and that's going to be, educating folks on the emerging plans, getting their input, designing the final plan based on that as much to the extent we can on that input. Stressing the urgency of this moment. This will be the only time we could actually vote for a rebuild at a lower cost than it's previously considered if we use private and state funding as a match. And then phase two would be January to February, which is really like persuasion. Figure out who are those undecided voters and try to bring them over to yes. Figure out who those no voters are and hopefully try to address some of their concerns to the extent we can. And then, the last few weeks is really get out the vote, turning people out, turning out those yes voters.
All right, thank you. I think that we need to go into an executive session. I don't expect that it will take us terribly long, but there's something that needs to be addressed in an executive session around the appointment or employment